This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers, adult language, and mature themes. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to a podcast of rare antiquities. Today, we are going to continue our trial by fire and lead up to The Last Jedi by reviewing the Ewok TV adventures, Caravan of Courage and Ewoks, The Battle for Endor. Will we survive this episode? Only time will tell. This is Harry. I'll be your host for today's show.
I'll be your co-host, Geoff.
And I'm Nathan.
Thank you for coming on today. Tomorrow, we actually do see The Last Jedi as it's released for the general masses. But today, let's focus on these guys as per our custom. Let's first hash back any memories we have on these two particular Ewok adventures. Geoff, I'll give you the honor first. What are your memories of Caravan of Courage and The Battle for Endor?
It's not very clear. I can remember certain images. I remember there being a shuttle that crash landed on Endor. I remember a couple kids. I remember Wilford Brimley, and that is about it.
Okay, that's it. So,
yeah,
well, I guess we'll get to it. If you were surprised or not surprised at what you saw. I guess I'll ask you this quickly. Did any of it come back to you as you were watching it, or it was just felt like a brand new viewing experience?
Yeah, it did feel pretty new. Nothing, plot points weren't coming back, characters weren't coming back. Yeah, it did feel pretty fresh. So it was just almost like suggestions of a memory. So that tells me I probably saw these once when they were on, when I would have been, 7 or 8 years old, and probably never again.
All right. Nathan.
Yeah, I barely remember these. In fact, it was only a couple of years ago that I had remembered, just doing a little bit of just research online, that there was even two movies. I'd forgotten. I'd always sort of remembered for many years that it was just one. And then I remembered the title as Battle for Endor, which was weird because I don't remember the second one that well. And the first one, all I remember was that it was two kids teaming up with some Ewoks to find their parents. I remember that there was a giant monster at the end. And then the only other thing that I remembered for all these years was that a kid touched water and then was stuck under that. That's what I remember.
You actually had that kind of detailed memory. Okay, that's great.
Those were kind of the only things. It was all very vague because I couldn't remember. I think it was a boy and a girl, maybe. And then the only other thing that sort of came back as I was watching these was in the second one, the woman who would turn into the crow. Like suddenly I'm like, oh, okay, that I kind of remember. But Battle for Endor, the rest of it, I did not remember it at all. So watching these, and I watched them back to back, it did feel like a kind of a new experience. Quick aside, not only did I watch these two, I watched The Room, the Tommy Wiseau Room. I watched all three of those in one day, and reality ceased to have any meaning anymore. Just because, anyways, it doesn't matter. The Disaster Artist came out. I wanted to rewatch it anyways. But yeah, it felt mostly new. And when I saw that water scene, I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. That actually did happen in the film.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I have similar experience as you. I think I watched these a bit more than maybe the both of you did. I remember, because, this is after Return of the Jedi. I remember at the time I was taping anything and everything related to Star Wars that came on TV, whether it was a special, behind the scenes special or a making of special or the movies themselves on TV, as well as these Ewok movies. So I remember having them both on tape on VHS when they aired. I taped them, probably watched them a few times. I think my memory really was only more about the Battle for Endor, which is the second one. Watching that movie this time around, I've pretty much remembered most of everything. Surprisingly, I did not remember much about Caravan of Courage except for the fact that the Ewoks were in it. And I had no idea that Sindel and Mace, the two kids and the family, were in both movies. I had no recollection of what happened during that movie. So it was fairly fresh for me when I watched it this time. But like you guys, maybe it might have been since the mid to late 80s since I had seen these movies. So it was a definite blast from the past. So does anyone want to say anything? How about the Ewok cartoon when it was on air on Saturday mornings? I'll freely admit, and Droids as well. I had watched both of those. I don't think there were that many episodes for each. because I was just consuming everything Star Wars that I could at the time, no matter how good or bad they were. How about you guys?
Oh, absolutely. I don't remember Ewoks cartoon that well, but I do have some faint memories of watching Droids and liking it at the time. Never kind of revisited, although I always remember it kind of being later in the 80s, perhaps, but memories a little kind of foggy from that time period. And also with these two movies, I don't know if we ever taped it, but I think we must have watched them more than once. And our dad used to actually take us to this video store. I remember renting TV shows and stuff like that. Like
there were TV shows back then?
Yeah, but sometimes they're sort of presented as like you wouldn't rent the whole series, but you would get like 2 episodes. Like I remember we would rent like 2 episodes of the old Spider-Man show from the 70s, the live action one. There's another show that we rented called The Voyagers, which I absolutely loved. And, you'd get maybe 2 episodes. So I think if we didn't tape it ourselves when it aired, I mean, I feel like we would have rented it at some point in the late 80s because we were there often with our dad. He would take us there very often. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Jeff, correct me.
I don't have any memory of that, to be honest. I know that we rented a lot of stuff back when we got a VCR for the first time. We were renting movies all the time. But I don't recall renting this. Like, it feels like it's been 30 years since I've seen it. That's what it feels like to me. I mean, I remember watching the Ewok cartoon and Droids. I couldn't pick out any storylines from those cartoons, but for sure we watched those on Saturday morning. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember a thing from those cartoons except I think the introduction to Droids is the only thing I remember, and then I remember seeing the Ewok cartoon. But yeah, for the life of me, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about them. So, okay, how about we get straight into the first one? What I'd like to do here is let's talk about each movie individually, and then we can wrap it up at the end with final thoughts, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to start her off with Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure. A family of space travelers crash their star cruiser on the forest moon of Endor. The parents, Jeremit and Katerin, look for help, but when they return to the ship, their children Mace and Sindel are missing, and soon find themselves kidnapped by the forest giant Gorax. Separately, the Ewok House of Deej also has their own problems. The father Deej goes on a hang-gliding mission to look for his 2 lost sons, but as he's flying through the sky, he notices a shiny object on the ground. After rescuing his 2 sons from being trapped on a mountainside, they go and investigate and find the Star Cruiser, as well as Sindel and Mace. Mace tries to go all solo on the Ewoks, but you don't fuck with the House of Deej, and he soon finds himself tied up and is taken back to the Ewok village. Can you smell what the Deej is cooking? The Ewoks notice that Sindel is starting to get very sick, so Mace pleads to the Ewoks for help. They release Mace, and through their kindness, they help Sindel, but their medical supplies are short, so they go on a medical adventure of a lifetime. Along the way, prepare to meet such weird alien creatures such as horses, chickens, rabbits, meerkats, and a dollar store puppet in a tree followed by a paper mache worm. The Ewoks find the medicine and Sindel is saved. Mace and Sindel then thank the Ewoks by fucking off in the middle of the night without saying goodbye, and then are attacked by what Geordie LaForge would probably label as some kind of animal thing. Mace and Sindel take refuge in a tree stump, but the Ewoks come to their rescue again, and Wicket the Ewok saves the day by being the badass we all know him to be by blowing a poison dart into the animal thing, killing it. If only the animal knew how to speak Jovitos. Mace realizes that the dead animal has one of their parents' life's bracelets on it, and it shows that the parents, or at least one of them, is alive. The Ewoks then send Mace and Sindel to talk to Logray, the Ewok chief, and they go on a vision quest. Happy Hanukkah, everyone, as Logray uses a mirrored dreidel to reveal the fate and location of the parents. They are all shocked to see them being held prisoner in the cave of the Gorax. The Ewoks agree to help rescue their parents and let the great Gorax hunt begin. Many songs will be sung this day. Before they leave, Logray bestows gifts to each warrior that would soon make Imperial troops tremble in fear, as the Ewoks, Mace and Sindel receive feathered headbands, a candle, a rock, and a stick. A crystal and an ivory tooth is additionally given to Deej, as they need to convince 2 other Ewoks to join them in order to complete their courageous caravan. They pick up the axe-murdering Chuckathorth and Kank the priestess, and then they go off to the cave of Gorax. Along the way, they run into some trouble at a shallow drinking pond and get harassed by glowing fairies. But oh, that Logray, such a wise Ewok. The walking stick and the candle come in handy to save the day. As they reach Gorax's cave, they must climb across a chasm only connected via a massive spider web, and then surprisingly defeat a couple of massive spiders. seriously, the spiders came from nowhere to take them by surprise. Definitely unexpected. Mace, Sindel, and the Ewoks are brave and team up together to defeat the spiders. Caravan finds the parents held in the dangling cage. One of Deja's sons provides a distraction to lure Gorax away, while Mace and the others rescue the parents. As they flee, Chukatorth is killed, but the rest of the group manage to trick Gorax into falling into the bottomless chasm. But wait, Gorax manages to hang on to the side and is about to snatch Sindel, when Mace then lets the spirit of Chukatorth to help him. Use the axe, Mace. Let go, Mace. Mace then throws the axe with such force and precision, it would make 1,000 Dothraki women scream with ecstasy, and Gorax falls to his death. Chukatorth will be with you, always. Back at the Ewok village, all is well, and they party it up like it's 1983. The end.
Yeah, I actually like this movie under its alternative title, The Fellowship of the Heart Rate Monitor.
Yes. Also, Harry, you forgot to mention the wild exotic alien known as a ferret.
Oh, yes. Ferrets, yes. Yeah, so it's a pretty simple story. This is written by George Lucas. I'm sure you noticed right off the bat during the credit sequence. One thing I'm not really sure of is the time frame where this falls in the Star Wars universe in comparison to Return of the Jedi. Because technically, when I was doing my research online, they're saying this is 3 years after A New Hope. But I'm not sure if they got that time frame correct. Is that before or after Return of the Jedi then? If it's just 3 years after the events of A New Hope. Any of you guys?
Well, wouldn't that be at the same time then?
I have no idea. Is that time frame only 3 years between the first 3 Star Wars movies?
I thought it was more.
That's what I thought.
Because if this took place after Return of the Jedi, then wouldn't the forest moon of Endor be a smoldering apocalyptic wasteland due to the billions of tons of space debris from a moon-sized space station?
Oh, see, I thought this was years before Return of the Jedi.
So yeah, that's what you think. But technically on the internet, this says 3 years after A New Hope. But I mean, that's the internet. Who knows? But someone had mentioned that if we looked closely, one of the Ewoks playing in this movie was holding a toy or something like that. So that seems a little odd. So I'm not sure. So the actors here, you may recognize the mom, Fiona Flanagan. She played Data's mom in TNG.
That's right.
Yeah. She was in Lost, and she's been in lots and lots of TV shows and movies over time. The 2 young children, Aubrey Miller, who played Sindel. These 2 Ewok movies were the only movies in her career. Eric Walker, who played Mace. I think he appeared in some other TV shows and TV movies later on. These were his first roles. But I think now he just is like a record producer or something like that, what he's doing now. And Joe Johnston was involved in these movies with the production design and the effects, so I'm sure you guys recognize that. Aside from that, there's not a lot of notes here, except for the fact that George Lucas just really intended these movies, and it's very obvious these are aimed strictly at children.
You missed the narration from
Bill
Frosty
Ives.
the Snowman.
Yeah, Bill Ives. That's right.
Burl Ives.
Yeah, I have him in my notes. But you are correct. I was going to bring him up a little later. He is the narrator for this particular film. There is no narration for the second one. Yeah, I guess. Any thoughts on that, Geoff, hearing his voice?
Well, I mean, at first, to talk about the narration, I mean, I like the narration. It had that storybook quality. I'm listening to him like, fuck, that sounds just like Burl Ives. That sounds just like the dude from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I wonder if that's him. So, when the credits came up, I'm like, yeah, I did a little fist pump. So, he's got a good voice for narration. It sounded, like I say, it's got that storybook quality to it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts before we want to get more into the movie as we proceed here? Anything, Nathan?
2 thoughts. One was I felt that, and I know we'll get to the second movie later, but I kind of felt like these were almost like a testing ground for Willow in a weird way. Maybe not exactly. I don't know when the idea for Willow started bouncing around, but I mean, I can sort of see some of, not similar story points, but kind of feel like they're working on some ideas here with these 2 movies. And the other thing with the narration, I don't know what it is with George Lucas. He has this real thing for just aliens talking in their own language with no humans, no subtitles. And I felt like the narration here, this was just my theory, is that it's a bit of a reaction to what the reception was for the Christmas special, which if you've never watched it, there's like a huge, I don't know how much of it's in there, but there's a huge section of just Wookiees talking and in just their own language. And it's ridiculous.
Which is terrible.
It's terrible and it's ridiculous. Also, those costumes in that special are terrible. And so I kind of felt like this may have been, they're like, we need to have some narration here because we don't have anybody talking. Like, just remember what happened before, right? And so because the narrator is kind of pointless, he's just sort of describing what's happening to the audience because we have no way of understanding what the Ewoks are saying because the narration kind of goes away. He says like a couple things here and there, but for the most part, the narrator doesn't even explain what's actually happening in the movie when magical things happen. He only explains like, oh, well, this is so-and-so, and they're going to go off and do blah, so it was really uneven, the narration. I mean, I's got a great voice for it, but I almost wish that this was like just a nature documentary of just Ewoks, him narrating their life. Think that would be
ready
great.
For the walk, watching them, mate? I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's...
Those Ewoks are horny, man. I'm telling you. Yeah. Like, I sent you this link a long time ago, Geoff. If you remember, there was like a Good Morning America Halloween live TV spot during Attack of the Clones Revenge of the Sith time, and they had Ewoks there. All the news anchormen and women, they were all dressed up in Star Wars costumes, and they had, for some reason, hired all these little people to be dressed up as Ewoks. And these Ewoks were like humping, and this is live TV. They were humping the news anchor's legs. These guys were like kickboxing each other, wrestling, doing one-arm push-ups. I think one of them even tried jacking off. Like, seriously, it was pretty funny.
Yeah. No, I do. I had to change my IP address because I was getting investigated by Homeland Security after clicking that link.
No, Nathan, you got to look that up. It is a sight to see. It is funny. That is funny.
I've never heard of this. I have to find it.
You have to find it. It is. You will like.
Do not Google Ewok humping legs because you will probably get very different results.
Oh, I think there's probably a whole subgenre of furry porn that's just Ewoks related.
All right, guys, let's get into this first movie here. So we'll try and get through it pretty quickly here, but let's go through all the opening scenes here. So we have the parents who you see the shuttles crashed. They have gone away probably to look for help. When they came back, the kids are gone. You see Gorax coming in. What did you think of this opening scene and seeing Gorax right off the bat? Was it effective? How about the effects? How about Gorax himself? Geoff, how about you start?
I thought it was okay. I was actually a little surprised, pleasantly, at the production quality for a TV movie. Certainly it's not great at this moment, but it felt cinematic, and that was one thing that I didn't recall it feeling like. So it was fine. It seemed like they were doing a bit of a half-ass search for their kids, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, look, over here. And it's like a half a step away. There's like the girl's jacket. Okay, it's not that dark. I mean, come on. They weren't doing a great job there. But it was okay.
All right, Nathan.
Actually, the appearance of the Gorax, I thought looked pretty good for 1984. Actually, but yeah, the mom and dad, I can't really blame the actors. I mean, they're like, hey, just say what's on the page, and what's on the page is terrible. And so they're just doing the best they can. But yeah, the whole staging of the scene is very strange. But yeah, I didn't really think of that. It felt very cinematic and much more a 1984 television movie. I imagine, though, that like a lot of money was kind of poured into this because it is Star Wars, and Lucas is like, hey, look, like we can make this work. And also, I did kind of like the way they were dressed. It still kind of felt very New Hope-esque. It has like that late 70s feel to their clothes and their hair a bit. So, I mean, the dialogue is terrible. There's no question about that. But other than that, it's like, okay, this kind of works.
No, I agree. I love the appearance of the Gorax. I thought it was very, not scary, but there was a bit of tension there. I can see how little kids could be scared by this. I think the effects were great. I thought it was a really good beginning to the movie here. So let's move on to the Ewoks themselves. So you see Deej, and I guess Wicket's part of his family, and he's building his hang glider. And then let's talk about like these opening scenes here. And this is where you get more of just them, as you mentioned, Nathan, just them talking, and then a little bit with the narration. And then he goes off and looks for his kids, his two sons. He sees the shiny object on the ground, rescues his two sons from the mountainside there. And then you see them finally go investigate the shiny object, which turns out to be the shuttlecraft and then you finally meet Sindel and Mace. So let's combine all these scenes here until where the Ewoks meet Sindel. Nathan, how about you start us off?
Well, watching it, it's like, okay, I can sort of see this is interesting maybe for kids, because at that point you've only got the 3 movies and the narration giving you a little bit of backstory of the Ewoks. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then when he busts out the Ewok glider, like, okay, cool callback. But then I started like, what are his 2 sons doing? They appear to be like height on the side of a mountain with each other or something like that. I really couldn't figure
it out. I want to talk about
because
that.
the narrator is saying, well, they may be lost. I'm like, no, they just got hung up getting into a dumb fight somewhere while like apparently like freeform climbing a mountain face or something. And
they're savage creatures.
And it's like, okay, whatever, this is fine. They go to the ship, and this obviously because it's like, hey, we got to get this moving, need to move it along. And I have to say, like, when you have Mace show up, this kid is a pile of garbage from the word go. And he's I got a lot of things to say about this kid. As for the little girl, Sindel, I feel like for both these movies, she was in these movies against her will, because she's probably just a little kid, doesn't know what's going on. Someone's saying, just say lines at these furry people. Actually, one thing I did like, though, is that actually, again, the production value, these costumes for the Ewoks look like they were probably right out of the movie. Whereas,
I'm sure they were.
I hate to go, and kind of hate to go back to the Star Wars special, but I mean, a lot of that production, like the other Chewbacca's family, like those costumes are terrible. So I was like that they actually like were putting some effort into this. And even the ship itself, I mean, it's still a little bit on a TV budget, but it's kind of fine. But again, it was, okay, we need to move along the plot. Yeah, he's going to have the sons and they're going to go see what the shiny thing is or whatever. So it's moving kind of fast. And I think for a kid, you're not really thinking about that sort of stuff, but you're watching it through adult eyes. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is very simple. We're just moving from place to place now, right? There's no, okay, they do this and it causes this next thing to happen. It's just like, and then.
Mm-hmm. Geoff, how about yourself?
To try to look on the positive side, I'm sure 5-year-old me ate this up. The hang glider was cool. The Ewoks felt very familiar. It was very consistent with the Ewoks we saw in Return of the Jedi. So if you dug that as a kid, then this is picking up all those same threads. The slapsticky humor and production values are very good for a TV movie. Yeah, that kid was a garbage fire, pretty much straight off. And I don't want to blame a kid for his performance. That's just, it's not fair. But, and yeah, the girl, she was actually, what I thought is she was really young to be in a movie, and that felt wrong. Like it felt like child labor-ish to me. But the Ewoks are all right.
Well, I mean, I'll echo some of your comments here. I think the production value is quite good here. I love some of the cinematography and the camera angles they have. You see Deej and Wicket playing on top of the mountain. Then you can see the far landscape shots beyond where the hang glider is, and then you see the shots of them flying through the air. I liked some of these scenes. Yeah, the mountainside stuff, it was kind of a little odd there, Nathan. I did get a kick out of the 2 sons because they just were wrestling and punching each other. And then when they were falling, they just landed on top of each other. And this is something I want to bring up, is that, do you think these movies kind of roughhoused the little people for laughs a little too much? I was going to bring it up later, but we can bring it up now. I don't know.
Absolutely. I thought that more about the second one, but I think this one, yeah, it's a little exploitive, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit exploitive. That's looking at it from today's lens. You see that more than you would, as you said, Geoff, when you were a 5, 6, 7-year-old watching these movies for the first time. I mean, the rules have changed too, etiquette and how we should treat each other. I mean, things have improved since then too, but I think those little people were taken advantage of a little bit. But yeah, I agree with you guys on Mace. Like, he was dressed like Luke Skywalker and had the attitude of Han Solo. That's the note I wrote down here. And I also found that Deej, when he met Sindel for the first time when she was hiding in the shuttlecraft, man, he looked fucking creepy. Deej is a scary fucker, man. Those eyes and teeth, like, they don't move. And I'm wondering, is this why George made them blink in the Blu-ray editions? He always had that nugget in the back of his head. Yeah,
it's got to be.
They look soulless.
They all have a weird dead-eyed look that the blink does give them maybe a little bit more life. Because the best they can do is just kind of stick their tongue out a little bit through the teeth when they talk. Like sometimes they'll do that. I don't know. I didn't get like a creepy vibe from that, actually. Maybe at that point I wasn't paying as close attention.
I paused it. He freaked me out. I wrote it down. So I was definitely disturbed a little bit by that. So then Mace, because of his aggressive attitude, they tie him up a la Han Solo and Chewie and Luke and take him back to the Ewok village. But why didn't the Ewoks cook and eat Mace? I know this is a kid's movie, but we gotta have some consistency here. So that always kind of was in the back of my mind too. Maybe just because 3PO wasn't there and they needed to honor him. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But let's move on. Sindel starts getting sick. So the Ewoks are nice. The lady or the woman or the wife of Deej, the House of Deej, gives the meds. It's not enough, so they have to go on another little adventure. Mace and some of the Ewoks. So let's talk about a couple of things here. Their adventure when they go out to get the meds from that other tree. We get some more narration from Burl Ives there. And, some world building about the Ewoks and where they're getting their meds and how they live. We talk about the tree monster. And then let's also talk about when Sindel feels better and when they come back and he gets the meds and then they again run away. So Mace gets up and just drags Sindel away in the middle of the night, and then you get that wolf-like creature stalking them. And then the Ewoks save them again. So let's talk about, and then they find that, as you talked about, the medical alert bracelet thing you were mentioning there, Geoff. And that gives them the idea where the parents are still alive. So let's talk about all these scenes together. So Geoff, how about you start us off?
Well, I feel like they could have combined a lot of this to trim it down. I mean, you don't usually try to pad out a TV movie. So that was kind of strange. Were they going to go out to get the psychedelic maple syrup, whatever it is, they're tapping out of that tree trunk, bring it back to give said concoction to a small child? And thankfully, it doesn't kill her. So that's good. And then, yeah, they're like, okay, thanks for saving us. Thanks for giving us food and shelter. Fuck y'all, we're out. It just makes Mace seem like a big dick, which we already know he is. So I don't know. They need to keep playing on that. And that just to give us the action scene with whatever the hell that paper mache wolf, like you said. So I didn't care for really much of what happened here, other than Wicket's poison dart was pretty dope. But other than that, this felt very like I just wanted things to get going. Like, come on, let's get going here. For the heart rate monitor, that was unnecessary. Now they need to set this up so that we know what it's for in the second movie. So that was a little strange.
Yeah, I think this is really padding. I mean, I didn't really do a ton of research on this movie, but my understanding is that they needed to have it so it can play for like a 2-hour runtime with commercials and stuff.
You are
correct. Okay.
So what
I wasn't sure if that was correct.
Just like the holiday special, George was probably going to release this on some other format, and it might have just been kind of like a direct-to-video release where people would rent it. But then he had a change of heart and wanted to put it on TV. At least this is how I understand it from the research. And he needed to pad out some of this stuff to get it on, I think this aired on ABC or something like that. So that was kind of the deal. So they had to film a few additional scenes to pad it out.
Yeah, because it's an odd movement for the story because, okay, she gets sick. Okay, well, that's interesting because now not only do they have to find their parents, but now the girl may be dying. So, okay, now we're heightening the plot. But then this all gets just resolved very quickly. And then she's kind of okay again. Like the tree monster thing, what the fuck was he even going to do? Because it's like this little, he had this weird murderous look in his eyes.
The puppet, right?
Yeah, and I want to talk about this again when we get to the pond scene. But it's like, what kid, what were you doing? Like what? It was so strange. He was just like the way he was creeping up and he's got his hand, he's going to force choke it or something. Like I thought the monster was kind of neat. And I think the implication is that like that creature, it's like its tongue, like those fish that have like the globe. I can't remember what they're called, but they have the globe thing, that big line that comes out of their head. They're like,
yeah.
You guys know what the fish I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was something like that, but it wasn't cut together very well, so you didn't see if that was actually that or not. And then I also couldn't understand why they were sneaking out at night, because I didn't feel that they're prisoners or anything. And they did keep his gun, which makes sense. But if they're like, yeah, we're out of here later kind of thing, they're not a prisoner. So it was strange at night. And like that wolf creature, whatever, there were a few shots that I thought looked pretty good, again, for 1984 TV movie. But it was just, again, very convenient that it's just like, we got to get them on the path to find their parents. How are we going to do that? I don't know. This thing belongs to the Gorax, I guess. And he put the bracelet. I mean, it was so stupid because I actually rewound it at this point. Like, whoa, wait, what did I miss? Why? Who has the bracelet? I thought like they opened it up and he had eaten it or something like that at one point. But it's like, no, it's just like on him.
I thought it would have been an awesome scene. The Ewoks, like, they actually feast on the wolf creature. And as they're cutting it open, a la like the Temple of Doom, when they cut the snake right in front of Sindel, it spills out the medical alert bracelets. I thought that
with a attached arm. Like just eating like the dad's arm or something like that or whatever. Yeah. I mean, this is like, 30, 40 minutes of the movie that they probably could have blown over. But like, not whatever, we're just going to have fun with it. And again, it's more narration, world building. I wish it was just that. I don't need these kids.
It's interesting. I partially disagree with you guys. I agree that the mini adventure with Mace in the tree monster, that is complete filler. That feels like they just wanted to pad it out. But I still enjoyed it for what it is. I know none of us are feeling the Mace character, but to me, that's not depriving me of any enjoyment of that puppetry, because I love that little furball puppet that was just making the noise and peering out, and it was so fake, but there's a charm to it. And I was laughing. I was having a few chuckles, and then as he's pulled in, then you see the kind of worm that's coming out, that sock puppetry or whatever it is, or paper mache, and it reminded me of the throwback to the asteroid, the worm giant, the Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, I agree. Mace running away, pulling Sindel away at night doesn't make any sense. But yeah, he's a dick of a kid. But I did love the wolf-like creature, as you guys mentioned. The stop motion effects here was really good. And I got a kick out of when they hid in the tree. I thought there was a bit of tension there. The wolf's trying to get in. I mean, this is classic fairy tale fantasy kind of scenes here, where you're seeing the wolf and the big paw trying to claw his way in. And for a kid, I can just kind of imagine myself, that would be kind of scary. And I thought it was effective what they did, and I love the cutaway to the next morning when all you see is Sindel wakes up. She sees an Ewok getting tossed around and being thrown into the opening pretty much, and his butt's just sticking in there, and he just gets back up and goes right back at it and goes after the wolf. And I love these scenes. I mean,
I thought that part was pretty effective. And like in the morning.
Yeah, the morning.
And the fight part, I thought that actually was pretty good. And you are right. There's a good amount of tension there with the wolf and stuff. But I mean, the stuff leading up to that, there's some weirdness, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But in a good amount of tension building, I think. I totally agree with you there.
I just took it for what it is. This is a very simple kids' adventure. So I'm enjoying it as we go along here from what I'm seeing so far. But I agree with you, Geoff. I mean, Wicked saves the day. Pretty sweet. Poison dart there. They find the bracelet there. Again, George maybe a little ahead of his time. So since they get that bracelet, Mace is probably wondering, can you help us? This means our parents are still alive. So they Ewoks take him back to Logray. And I believe we saw Logray very briefly in Return of the Jedi. Is that correct?
We did, yeah.
No, but I think that chief, the guy who was saying, no, we're cooking Han Solo, is this the same Ewok? Because they look different.
The one here seems to have more of a mustache and beard thing going on, but the costume itself looks correct. And he also has that headdress as well.
They both have headdresses, but the Ewok themselves, like the costume, looks different. So I'm wondering if they're supposed to be playing the same character, or maybe potentially that costume got damaged and they had to make a new one. You never know. But either way, Logray, the wise old Ewok, and he could peer into his spinning dreidel, and you can see that they're held by the evil Gorax. The first thought I had here was, man, the prequel trilogy Jedi could have really used Logray to solve all of their problems. Who is the Sith Lord? Who is the Phantom Menace? No problem. Where's my dreidel? So
Logray is Snoke. That's
Logray
my name.
Is Snoke, yeah. And then we get the Ewoks here. They agree to help save the parents the minute they find out the parents are being held by the Gorax, even though the narration makes it very clear that no Ewok has ever returned from the Gorax cave. So then now we have our Lord of the Rings moment, as you guys have talked about, and Logray bestows a gift to each of the warriors who are going on here. Deej gets the wings of hope. One of his sons gets the wings of courage. Sindel gets a candle. Wicket gets a walking stick. Mace gets a rock. I love it here. Logray actually says, and correct me if I'm wrong, chuck it. No, did you guys get that? When he gets the rock, Mace gets the rock, he says, chuck it.
No.
Sure. No, he says that. He says that.
Oh, okay.
Or something very similar. So I'm sure George was making an alien language. It wasn't actually chuck it, but it sounded like chuck it. And I'm not sure if that was deliberate or not. And then we'll talk about Chuckatooth and Kank later. But what did you think of these scenes? The dreidel, Logray, them revealing the parents are alive with Gorax, and then the Lord of the Rings moment. Everyone's getting a little gift here that is bestowed onto them by Logray. Anything worth value to you guys here? Did you like anything? Hate anything? Geoff, how about you?
Sorry.
Nathan, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I was going to say, I really did like these scenes because, it reminded me of Lord of the Rings. a little bit, and every D&D campaign I've ever played my whole life. This
Did you get the
is
Wings of
always.
Courage and the Wings of Hope in those
Oh,
campaigns?
man, I probably always got the stupid rock is what I'm kind of remembering. But no, and I thought it was actually a neat sort of insight into the Ewoks, I thought. And I also kind of liked, I mean, obviously when you watch it, when he's getting the rock, you know, like, okay, it's probably going to end up being like the most important thing kind of thing. The dreidel I thought was pretty neat. Although, again, we haven't really kind of talked about, I guess it's only coming up now, the magic in this. It's strange because it's not presented as the Force, but I can't help but not think that it is the Force in some weird way.
So are you talking more about the priestess we'll meet later, like Kank, or you're talking about just the magical powers of, saying, the walking stick and the candle?
Yeah, even the dreidel itself is showing other places in real time. So does that mean that Logray is somehow able to use the Force and infuse it into these items, or are these just like super technological devices that have just landed on Endor somehow and they're using it that way? I mean, there's more stuff that kind of happens throughout the movie, and I thought that was sort of a strange choice that they made to not present it as the Force. I mean, maybe that's intentional, or like this is more of a fairy tale, right? So we're not going to worry about those sorts of continuity points. But overall, these scenes within the movie itself, I actually thought worked really well.
Geoff, do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I think I agree. The gift scene definitely gives you that sense of adventure and the embarking on a quest. And, you know, as sort of goofy as it is, it works in that context. So that scene was good, and it has some humor there. It's like, here's your cool artifact. Here's your fucking stick. Dude, here's your cool artifact. You can't take the rock. So that had some humor, intentional or otherwise. Thought that was pretty good. So yeah, it worked. I just assumed that magic was the Force. The Ewoks wouldn't know what the Force is. They would just call it magic. So whatever these artifacts were, I think it fits within the universe. It fits within the lore that we're already familiar with. So sure, fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think this fits completely within the Star Wars lore and mythology. I don't necessarily would say it's the Force, even though the Force is moving through everything. And the Ewoks definitely would have access to it. But I agree. I don't think they think it's the Force, or I don't really think George Lucas's intention here that it is the Force. You know, I'm sure you guys have known and read enough Star Wars material, played enough games to know that there are other alien species out there throughout the Star Wars universe that have access to abilities that are different than the Force, or maybe they partially use the Force and they still call it magic. So do these Ewoks are probably magical creatures, or have a religious belief and the ability to summon up some of that magic, or it could also be the power that's amplified on the Forest Moon of Endor itself. We don't know that, but I did like all of these scenes. I agree with you. It does symbolize and has the same foundations as them starting a quest. And I loved the humor. I loved the items. I thought it was great. So how about, let's move on. So we're going to meet the murderous axe-wielding Ewok badass Chuckathorth. And he has a little axe throwing contest with Mace. You see, they also pick up Kank, who is the Ewok priestess. And then once they start embarking off to the cave, Mace gets into trouble again with that scene you remember, Nathan, the magic pond, where he touches it and gets trapped underneath. And then you also get the fairy Tinkerbell scene one night where they're just sleeping at a campsite, and Sindel is able to trap all those creatures into the candle, which will obviously prove useful a little later. So what did you think of all of these scenes? Let's combine them.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, it's working because you have the mysticism or the magic or the Force or whatever we want to call it. So it's fine. It's working okay. I kind of wish that we got to this. This is some of the better stuff in the movie. There's a lot of scenes that drag it down, and I'm glad we're through some of that. Like, where we get a bunch of scenes where they're getting the horses ready to go and climbing into the thing on the horse, whatever, they have on a horse and all of that. So some of these other scenes, like the hand on the pond there, and he's, you know, it's a kind of a neat visual. So that's fine. It's just there's too much, I don't know, straight up boring shit that's going on around it that's bogging it down. And, you know, that kind of hurts it. I wonder if they're sort of stuck in a movie like this, and maybe we can talk more about it later, where you don't really have a lot of ability to have scenes where characters talk, because they're all, at least weird jungle bears and they don't speak English, so you can't have scenes where you develop their characters so much. And then the only characters who do talk, they're little kids, so you can't really do anything with them there. So we're forced to watch this other stuff that's surrounding all of that that's just not terribly interesting.
Well, there was one scene before when Mace and Sindel had escaped at night from the Ewok before they were chased by the wolf. We didn't touch on that. I didn't really particularly like the scene myself where he was having regrets, saying he wasn't a good son. And he has to, and he's talking to Sindel. He's revealing that to his sister. Did that help matters in any way? Or
no, that doesn't help matters because it doesn't work. Like, a kid would never say that. And they're not good performers because they're little kids. So that's why I say it's hard, because you can't have scenes like that through the whole movie. I mean, they do, but if they had any more, you're just going to blow your head off because it's so terrible. But you also, your other characters, it's an Ewok adventure. The Ewoks can really do much more than grunt in their strange language and throw an axe once in a while, which is cool, but it's tough. Like, it gets bogged down because they can't just have people talking all the time.
Okay. Nathan.
Yeah, and actually just to add one thing about the scene with Mace where he's opening up there, we don't even know this character that well. So like this revelation also just has no weight to it, I felt like. But as far as like the adventure, I do like when they meet the two new Ewoks, I guess. And I also, I actually kind of laughed at when they meet Chuckathorth.
Yeah, Chuckathorth.
I'm going to call him Chuckacon from this point on.
Chuckacon.
So I kind of liked this Ewok because, again, he was just a little, actually, all these Ewoks had, I feel like, their own personalities.
They had a unique personality, each one.
Yeah, they weren't just, we're just going to assume we're all just sort of like this homogenous society. They each have their own personalities, I thought. And Chuckacon he really kind of fit that niche of this brash, like almost like a woodsman type. But I also kind of laughed at when he cut the tree down. First of all, there's no way that axe is cutting down a tree that size. But the kid's reaction, the director must have been like, okay, I want you to take like 5 beats before you get angry at this Ewok, because the kid is just standing there looking at him and then blows up at him. I was like, oh boy. And then the meeting of, what was the female? Hank, right. And again, like these two scenes, like it totally reminded me of Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's like, oh, this is going to be like they're meeting the wizard. They even put her in like a pointed hat and everything like that. I was like, oh, this is great. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is that like some of the pacing, I think the other problem with some of the pacing around this is that when you write a script for television, you have to take into account commercial breaks. And so I think that kind of contributes to, okay, well, we're kind of doing stuff here, but we can't have an important scene because the commercial is coming up in 30 seconds. So we're just going to mill around. And then the next scene, we're going to open strong, and then it kind of peters out a little bit. The scene with the pond, I remember being because that's like a fear of mine, is being like stuck underwater and stuff. And I remember as a kid, I was like, oh, this is kind of scary. That's the other thing I remember from that, is being kind of a little bit frightened by this. And I thought it was sort of a neat thing. And again, it's a very Dungeons and Dragons, some weird trap, and you have to sort of figure out the puzzle of the trap, I suppose. The scene went on just maybe a little bit too long. They threw in the rope and it melted. Oh, they threw in the stick. It's like they should just tried one thing and then Wicket's a stick. Because then the other problem with the scene as well is that no one really sees him get trapped, and then the girl is just like screaming. And
yeah, I think there was an editing problem there.
Yeah, I agree because like they're off in the distance, and so the scene went on just maybe a little bit too long, and so that while rewatching it, like the idea of it is neat, and it's like, okay, we're gonna change, but the pacing of it, it's not good. The scene goes on for too long, and then like when we get to the next scene of the horse running off, like again, it's like, it's just like, okay,
that was the most useless scene, right? Because nothing happened.
Exactly. And again, it's like, oh well, that should have happened while the kid was underwater or something like that. It's like, we need 2 problems, but the story is so simplistic. Again, I think this is, like, it works for kids, right? It's like, okay, for a kid, maybe they're like, well, we can't ratchet up the tension too much. We can't, although I think really if it was to work, Mace was trapped underwater. The girl is on the horse or on the house on the horse. Felt so bad for that horse because it's like, that's a massive prop that thing has got to have on its back. I felt so bad for the horse. And then it's like, this is an Ewok adventure.
People
so the Ewoks,
riding horses with more weight, I'm sure.
True, but aren't those are not like full-size horses. Those are like ponies or something like that.
No, those are horses, man.
Are they? Oh, man. Some looked a bit smaller. Anyways, so, this is an Ewok adventure. So the Ewoks, I mean, the Ewoks do resolve both situations, but it's like, hey, let's show them what we can do, boys, and fix this problem. The other time too is like sometimes like a lot of these Ewoks don't even really do anything. They're just kind of here, right? I don't know. There's some real pacing problems here, but I mean, I'm like, okay, we're getting the adventure going a bit. We're doing stuff now, but yeah, a lot of just nothing sometimes happens, and I think that's just the format of being a TV movie.
I'm having a bit more fun of a time here, I think, than maybe you guys are. I'm really enjoying some of these scenes, like Chuckathorth, all that stuff between him and Mace. I thought it was pretty funny. I liked the little axe throwing contest. I liked Kank. I like that Mace fails his magic test, but Sindel passes. I mean, I thought these are okay scenes. I do agree that the magic pond scene is a great idea. It just probably went on for maybe a couple of beats too long, and there might have been an editing problem, but I like everything about that scene and the concept. Even the Disney fairy Tinkerbell scene, I mean, I think this is the scene I probably enjoyed the least out of these few scenes, but it's still not that bad because it does play a role. It's not something, as we've talked about before, Geoff, why are you showing me something that's not going to be used later? But they do use this concept later, and it's also more world building on Endor, so I really enjoyed a lot of these scenes. I also love that one Ewok, one of Deej's sons, who gets up during all the commotion. During the ferry scene, he gets out of his tent, says, "Fuck it, I'm going back to bed." I got a real good chuckle out of that one. So now their caravan reaches Gorax's mountain fortress, and they need to get in, and this is where the rock comes into play. I mean, I think this is something where I don't think they needed to have Mace throw it away and then Wicket pick it up, but that's awesome that Wicket still picked it up. And the one nice thing here is I really liked the Ewoks' attitude. They're not dicks, but this is one of the funniest lines in the movie, is that when Mace admits that he threw it away, the Ewok actually speaks English. He goes, yeah. "Oh, you did? Ah." Did you guys pick that up?
I did, and I thought that was so strange. And then I thought, did the actor just say it, and then they forgot to throw in some Ewok sort of thing?
Oh man, that caught me so off guard. I was drinking some water. It literally went everywhere. It was up my nose. It was all over the paper when I was taking notes. Holy shit, that just caught me completely off guard. I love that scene. So the magic arrowhead that was in the rock actually shows them how to get in, and Mace blasts the entrance open with his gun. So Wicket and Sindel stay by the entranceway, and the rest of the group continues on, and then we get the spider scenes. And that set was just straight out of, but this came first, it was the Last Crusade chasm, just with a spider web. It's a leap from the lion's head, literally. I expected Indiana Jones to pop out. Let's talk about these spider scenes here, and then we'll get to the final scenes with the Gorax. So, Geoff, anything regarding the spiders here that you liked? Did you like any of these scenes? Were they effective? Were they frightening? How was the production value, or was it just a throwaway for you?
It kind of felt like one of those sort of haunted houses you can go to on Halloween, where they have the cotton swab spider web built against the wall there. It wasn't a very convincing, because the production value has been pretty high to this point, so I was a little disappointed with that.
How about the spiders
you kind of alluded. Oh my god.
Those are the worst.
One just drops down. It's like, here are these guys messing up my crib. He goes down to check it out, and he just gets sliced up. That first little one.
They ran out of money. They must have run out of money at this point.
Well, we're done. So somebody go to the dollar store and get the Halloween decorations, because that's what we've got going for us here. And the bigger spider, I was like, oh my god. I mean, it still looked kind of creepy because it's still a spider. I don't care who you are, spiders are unsettling at best. So I was creeped out. I don't remember which Ewok was sort of the last one to kind of cross, and that's when the big one came down, and it was wrapped around him.
Yeah, that was a good scene, though. That was a good scene.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty gross. I thought they were gonna do something here, because Kank uses the shaman stick or whatever, and uses that green light to sort of hypnotize it or whatever. So I thought we were going to get some kind of communion with all life forms type of bullshit, where they're all of the forest or whatever. But nope, as soon as it's over, you're dead. See you later, buddy.
I told you, man, you don't fuck with the Ewoks, man. Vicious.
Because they will fuck you up.
Well, they prison shanked that spider.
Yeah, that's Wicket. Wicket shanked it.
That's Wicket.
That was Wicket.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot it.
Actually, that was a great scene because I like the way it was filmed because, and we haven't really talked about Warwick Davis. Obviously, he's playing Wicket. He did a pretty good job here too because he falls backwards, and I like the way he falls backwards and the way the camera is showing. Even though the spider is so fake, they still built the tension because you think the spider's gonna bite Wicket still, but then you see the stick or the knife come up and the arrowhead, and he's just stabbing it from underneath. And oh man, I thought that was effective.
It worked okay. It worked fine, yeah.
But I'm looking at it from a perspective and a kid. I kind of have this memory of me being either grossed out or shocked because I'm seeing the stabbing going in. Like, I've seen, the Walrus Man's arm cut off and all that stuff in Star Wars and Luke's hand cut off and stuff. But this is, even though there's no blood or liquid coming out, it just feels different. I don't know why. This feels more violent in some way.
Yeah, it was somewhat visceral for a kid's movie to see this, like the knife, like penetrate the carapace of this cardboard spider or whatever. Yeah.
Nathan, how about yourself? All the spider stuff.
Well, before that, I do want to say, like, when they come up to the castle of the Gorax or whatever, again, this is a nice little piece of world building that I really liked because, like science fiction will sometimes have this problem where you just have a planet that's all redwood forest. And so you get to see some new areas of
deserts
or it's all just, the all desert one I could kind of buy. But I kind of like this, and they actually did have some pretty nice matte paintings and stuff like that. But anyway, as far as the spider scene goes, I think it could have worked better if the staging was maybe a little bit better when they're trying to cross, because they were so obvious. I don't even think the spiders looked that bad. It's just the way that they moved was terrible. So, and with the shot, and sometimes when you have some of the Ewoks, and I mean, this may be a bit inflammatory, but sometimes little people are not the most agile of people.
Watch
and so
that
you have
video I'm telling you about. Watch that video on YouTube. You will change your mind.
Okay, but for this, I mean, they're already in, it's like when they're actually crossing and like they're already kind of in a precarious position for anyone. I think this would be very difficult for any actor to do. And with the spider coming down, that part didn't work well. But when Kank was using the magic staff, I was like, oh, that's cool. I thought that was really neat. I wish she would use like more powers throughout this movie. But then the rest of the scene and with Wicket and everything is like, oh, this works pretty well. Definitely from a child's perspective is like, and I, as someone who's not a big spider fan, that's like, oh yeah, I think for a kid, I think this works pretty well because you've got the pit and everything, and part of it kind of works. I mean, I think if they didn't do so many close-ups on the spiders, they wouldn't look quite as bad, or they just lit it a little bit differently. But I mean, they just looked too fake, and then they're like, okay, we can't do close-ups on the spiders or anything like that.
Yeah, I wish they did some stop motion here, even with one scene or something with the big spider or something like that. I think that could have been effective here. I think it was just
I kind of wonder if a spider if that's more or less difficult to do in stop motion. I wonder, right? Because you've got a lot of moving parts there on a spider, because the wolf looked pretty good, I thought. But I mean, who knows? I mean, overall, though, I think the takeaway for me was Kank using her hypnosis spell there or whatever. I thought that looked pretty cool. Yeah. Actually, that worked pretty well.
No, I agree. I think that was one of my favorite moments too. I liked it when after the spider's hypnotized, then you see its head kind of droop, and then she kind of releases him, and then he comes back, he snaps back into it, and then just resumes his stalking, and then they cut the web. So I liked all those scenes. I still was even a little creeped out, as I mentioned, with the Wicket thing. It's just, when he falls back, and I like Wicket myself, so I have a soft spot for Wicket from Return of the Jedi, at least that one Ewok. So you just kind of get at the edge of your seat and, Wicket, no! But when he stabs him, it's like, fuck yeah, fucking Wicket. You're the man. I like that. So let's get into the battle with Gorax and the rescue of the parents. So, Geoff, I'll let you have the honor of starting us off with that one here. What'd you think of the rescue and Gorax's final moments and all that stuff?
Okay. I'm sure you guys could agree. And this is probably just an issue with the design of everything. But why didn't they just throw the rope up to the cage? Like, they got to slingshot the kid up there on the giant axe, which was a pretty cool prop, the giant axe with the carved obsidian head blade, which is neat. But they catapult the kid up there. He lets the rope down to get the Ewoks up. There's clearly a space big enough for everybody to get out. And then they got to tie the rope to the thing, and they just shimmy down the ropes. So it seemed a little, maybe I'm missing something here, but it seemed a little elaborate. Like, you could have just thrown the rope up.
I don't know if they could have actually managed to toss it up all the way there, though.
Well, it didn't seem like couldn't have been that high, because I was looking at it.
You're forgetting the power of those Ewoks when they landed on that axe. You don't realize the power they have in those legs.
Well, what are we talking? Like, was it 40 feet? I mean, it just didn't feel. I mean, again, that's probably a problem.
You're also talking about a kid. Like, Mace is not that old.
No, I know but I didn't have a problem with them slingshotting him up there. That for whatever reason that felt fine. Like they managed to do that okay. I just didn't understand why they didn't just keep up there.
Okay.
They can clearly get out of the cage without any assistance because there's this big person-sized gap in it.
So there's a little trivia here. I'll throw a little trivia. So, Geoff, the original Battlefront 2, not the one that's out now, the one that was there for the original Xbox, you can actually go... They did this as one of the DLCs. The Gorax Cave could be played in Battlefront 2.
That's funny.
So you can pull that game up and kind of get an idea and maybe get back to us if throwing the rope up is possible or not.
Okay, well, so you tell me, how high was it? Because it doesn't look that high. Well, it doesn't look that high because it's at like eye level. The Gorax is pretty big, weren't they at his eye level? But it's at eye level with the Gorax, right? And the Gorax isn't 100 feet tall. He's like 20 feet tall. Right?
But this is semantics. This is just a kid's movie, man.
Well,
I'm not going to fault the movie just for that.
I'm saying that it's obviously in the script, it makes sense. Like it's fine in the script. They get to the point in production where it doesn't come off right. It's kind of silly. Other than that, where they're distracting the creature with their antics, like that's all fine. And I kind of liked how Hank made that stalactite drop from the ceiling and just crush him in the face as he's teetering on the edge there. That was pretty great there. And then the mom laser beams him over the edge. So, but then he climbed back up. I got a laugh out of that, probably unintentional comedy. And then he climbs back up, but he's just like he's there and falls exact same again. Like he wasn't able to break his fall the second time. I don't know. Bumble only bounces once.
Okay.
Anybody know?
Yeah, kind of, I agree with Geoff sort of, whereas I couldn't understand what they were trying to do with getting the parents out. I also couldn't understand why he kept parents for so long. It was strange. I actually did like the design of the Gorax. I thought the way it was shot was pretty cool. And so that kind of worked for me. And then I also sort of thought that this also sort of explains why in Return of the Jedi, they have catapults and those logs that come together. And those are all to fight the Gorax, man. I mean, so
they're prepared.
They are they know it's like they're out there. And I think there's multiple. You mentioned video games there, Harry, and Battlefront and Geoff, I don't know if you ever played Star Wars Galaxies, the old years ago. It's defunct now, but you could go to Endor, and I never personally saw one when I was playing the game, but there were Goraxes. Oh, really? There were multiple ones. Yeah. If you look it up online, it doesn't look as good as the show here. I mean, I kind of felt like the action here was pretty okay because even though their antics are sort of silly, so there's still some comedic elements. There's some things here for kids, but you got some nice tension, trying to get the parents out. And then again, I kind of feel with Chuckish, trying to take on the Gorax, this is it. It felt again, they have real characters here. They're not just jungle bears. And I also did that stalactite coming down. I thought it was going to be more graphic. I thought it was going to go through its skull or something like that. But I thought that, I don't know, I wanted blood. I wanted blood. And yeah, I feel that maybe some of the Ewoks could have been given maybe a bit more to do because it also kind of feels that other than Wicket, it's just Chuckashawn and Kank that are really doing the work here.
I don't know if you guys are really digging these scenes or not.
We make fun of them. I'll make fun of it kind of, but I do kind of dig it. I have some issues with the pacing or whatever, but I was pretty invested in it. I felt like, and I think they worked.
Yeah,
I agree. Of the scenes.
Yeah, I agree. I think these scenes really work in the Gorax Cave. I loved every second of it. I just absolutely adored, and I was laughing silly. The guy who was playing the Gorax, I loved all of his expressions. He was so perplexed at what the fuck is going on here. But I love the kind of the head tilts. It's like a confused dog, looking in the mirror. Then he's surprised. It's like, what? You guys got out? Oh, who the fuck is this little furball? And I just loved all of this stuff. And I was just having a really good time. I thought the effects were top notch, considering the size differences between the Gorax and everybody else. The distraction, the catapult. You guys briefly mentioned Chuckathorth. Another Ewok death that we have to absorb. Chuckathorth's death I thought was wrenching in a certain way. It's not that I'm crying a tear, but I thought it was very effective. And I liked that. I believe that Mace was having a moment there with him as he was dying. And I liked the little course, and the actor as he passed away. I thought these were really effective scenes. Gorax's death also, I really enjoyed both times when he fell down. I thought these were really high tension scenes for a kids' TV movie. I mean, these are not feature scenes, but I have seen movies and features that have had worse climactic moments in the third act, and I was enjoying everything here. So the movie pretty much ends now, so they're back at the Ewok village, and Logray provides Sindel the Wings of Hope, which is a nice little gift again. Another theme that kind of comes across in some George Lucas's movies, you know, the end of A New Hope, they get the medals. Phantom Menace, they get that weird glowing ball thing. Here, the Ewoks give Sindel a prize, the Wings of Hope. I thought that was very touching, and I loved the narration at the end was, I think he said, courage, loyalty, and love are the strongest forces in the universe. That is a very Star Wars moment, and I love that. It's a perfect ending to a kid's fairy tale movie. Felt very Star Wars to me. I love that. Nathan, how about you? Did you like that ending?
I did, actually. And it's sort of hard for me to maybe watch it through a kid's eyes now, but I'm like, yeah, this is actually like a good message for kids, and it was fun. It definitely felt very Star Wars. And I felt like a sense of satisfaction there at the end that we've come to the end of this adventure. Not really, I don't know, for me, not much more to kind of say
Millions
about
are pretty quick.
So, yeah, it blows by because they're like, man, we're going right up the last minute with all the action that we can, and then we're just going to resolve it. Yeah, no, I thought these scenes worked well, and it was a nice cap for the movie.
Geoff, yourself.
I think I agree with that. As you said, very Star Wars message, and I'm not trying to belittle it when I say it's a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny. It is, but it fits very well. And it's a kids' movie, so that's certainly nothing wrong with that. It fit. It was fine. Yeah, it was a fine conclusion.
Okay, that's good. So I don't want to talk about our final thoughts of this movie or whether you recommend it or not until the end. Let's get right into the battle for Endor, if that's okay with you guys. I'll hit you guys with a quick plot summary again. You guys okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Battle for Endor. It has been a year since the events of Caravan of Courage. The Tawani family are still stuck on Endor, as Jeremit is still trying to figure out how to power his ship. Seriously, he hasn't figured anything out yet. In that time, Sindel has developed a close friendship with Wicket the Ewok. The Ewoks have also completed Gabriel Cash's online Intergalactic English 101 course and are now fluent in basic, so conversing with the Tawani family is no longer an issue. Suddenly, a native tribe of alien humanoids known as the Marauders invade the Ewok village, killing many Ewoks. Oh, and the Tawani family are toast, as Sindel loses her parents and brother Mace in the battle. Sindel, Wicket, and other Ewoks are taken prisoner, and the Marauders take the Tawani power converter. Wicket and Sindel escape, only to find themselves trapped in a cave with another animal thing. Except this one can fly. Wicket MacGyvers up a hang glider and chases down the animal who has now taken Sindel. In what must be the same FX team that brought you the magic of Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, we get wonderful shots of Sindel falling, but Super Wicket is able to catch her, and they crash in an unexplored area on Endor. Back at the Marauders' castle, King Tarek demands George R.R. Martin's The Red Woman to make the power converter work. He simply wants the power, man. Holy hell, if only he knew about the Tashi station on Tatooine. Now that would have been wizard. Through the power of logistics, King Tarek believes that the little child will be able to unlock the power of the converter, where all other adults have failed, so he sends off the Red Woman to find Sindel. Sindel and Wicket are woken up by Teek, another little creature who seems friendly and has access to the Speed Force. Teek leads them to a quaint little house in the middle of the forest. There are no 3 beds in that house, but there is porridge, and they help themselves to some food. Little do they know that this porridge is sponsored by Quaker Oats, and the owner... You like that one?
Good one.
And the owner of the house, Noah, comes home and angrily kicks them out. Teek, being the kind soul he is, sneaks them some food later. Noah eventually softens and lets Sindel and Wicket into his house. There they learn that Noah has a kind heart after all, and he has been marooned on Endor for some time as his ship had also crashed, and his friend Salak long ago went looking for another power converter, but has never come back. Seriously, do none of these travelers stop at any of the Tashi stations to get power converters as backups for their trips? That evening, Sindel is lured out of the house by the Red Woman, who now has magically shapeshifted herself into a different woman using a magical ring. She snatches Sindel, and Noah, Wicket, and Teak follow her. Back at the Marauder's castle, King Tarek interrogates Sindel, expecting her to unlock the magic power of the converter. Make it work, he demands. He must have learned these techniques from when the Klingons were attempting to venture out into space. Noah, Teak, and Wicket manage to infiltrate Tarek's castle and rescue Sindel and the other captive Ewoks, along with retrieving a Tawani ship power converter. They escape back to Noah's ship, and the battle for Endor begins. It's Ewoks versus Marauders. Those vicious little bastards once again show you don't fuck with the Ewoks. The Marauders start getting their asses handed to them, Return of the Jedi style. But King Tarek has enough and captures Sindel once again. Noah declares the Klingon right of vengeance for the murder of his friend Salak, in which Tarek was responsible, and Tarek and him fight to the death. Despite being full of Quaker oats and having type 2's diabetes. Noah...
Sorry.
I'm going to have to start this line again. All right. Let's get back on track. Despite being... All right, I'm going to skip this line. Noah holds his own in a stick versus sword fight against Tarek. He's pretty spry for an old guy. Tarek does get the upper hand, but Wicket saves the day as he slingshots a rock at Tarek and activates the Red Woman's magic ring, which now happens to be worn by Tarek. The ring, ironically, provides Tarek with more power than he can handle, and he literally ends up as toast. This will provide much sustenance for the Ewok village to live on for many years. The Red Woman, trapped in a crow's body, flies away to an unknown fate. Back at the village, and with Noah's ship now powered, he and Sindel leave Endor, as we see Teak and Wicket waving goodbye to their old friends. May the furball be with you. In the end. All right. Geoff, any thoughts on that?
They sure pulled an Alien 3 here at the beginning of this movie, didn't they? I mean...
Oh, yeah.
That was some cold-ass shit.
It is pretty dark. Yeah.
So that was the first thing. I was like, oh my God. Like, it makes the events of the entire first movie totally moot, which is really unusual. I had a hard time figuring out what they were thinking when they made those decisions there. It certainly feels like a more robust narrative than the first one.
So I want to just throw this here. It just came to me now. So Caravan of Courage was 84. This movie was released 85. So Temple of Doom was 84 as well. George Lucas was going through a divorce at the time. Do you think that, depending on where this time was written, do you think that obviously he wrote this, like, just split up the family, like family is dead? Seems like this really could have impacted him in his writing.
Yeah, I guess so. But then why would you kill the brother then as well? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I could see them off in the parents and then sending the kids on the adventure themselves there, but that's dark either way.
Well, maybe there was criticism, or maybe agreed. The Mace guy just didn't work out.
What I think, and I'm just speculating here, of course, is that they figured, I mean, obviously both of these movies are marketed at very young kids, so could be that they figured Mace was too old and they wanted to focus on the girl being a little bit younger, and they didn't want to have the adult characters. So they're like, okay, we're just going to have an adventure with her and the Ewoks. That's what we're going for. The kids love the Ewoks. They like the little kid. We're just going to do that. Okay, that's our story. Oh, well, we got these 3 other characters we got to get rid of. Murder, death, kill, murder, death, kill, murder, death, kill. Done. Go. And that's what it felt like to me. They didn't really give it a second thought. They're just like, heart rate monitors. And that's when it was dark with the heart rate monitors too. Mm-hmm. That's why it felt like the payoff was in this movie from the first one. And that was really cool because she could just look and see, or look at her wrist like, oh, mom's dead. Oh, brother's dead. And dad's dead. Didn't like it.
So you did not like this?
I was just really caught off guard. I guess. I mean, it was bold for a TV movie geared at 8-year-olds. That's for sure.
How about you, Nathan?
Yeah, I think for me, it was more the fact that it was Mace. And I was floored. I'm like, whoa, wait, hang on a second here, right? And I could see killing the parents, maybe. And, Harry, I think it's pretty plausible that some of George Lucas's life has leaked out into this story. And so, I don't know, I can only imagine. Now, he didn't write the screenplay. He just did the story just based on a tiny amount of research I did. So
no, he did the story, right, but I mean, that's kind of everything.
Then yeah, well, that's what I mean. So then the directors who also wrote it, they're like, okay, this is what George wants. We're going to do this. And it's also a lot to put on a very young actress. to be, almost until they meet Brimley, kind of the human lead of this. That's a lot to put on a kid that age. And then Harry, also with your synopsis, feels like there's a lot actually going on in this movie, but for me, like actually when you watch it, there's still some weird pacing problems where there's stretches of time where nothing happens. But I think the overall premise of this movie is actually kind of neat. It's very weird. It almost doesn't fit in a weird way with Ewoks and Endor and what we know of it, but it's a much darker story, and that's kind of what I liked about it.
Yeah, we're getting into the beginning of this movie and not just really talking about the synopsis. I mean, I love this change. It is shocking. It's bold, but I think it works. And I think where George Lucas was coming from is losing the parents and then finding a surrogate fatherly figure with Noah. And if Mace was there, I don't know if George was probably thinking those scenes may not work because Mace is an older character. And I think he wanted to bypass having a whole other group of people being stranded and then say, oh, here's another spaceship crash and then a little girl is the only survivor. I think they wanted to build on the relationship between Sindel and then now have Wicket, and that's where the English comes in. So why don't we talk about that too? The Ewoks now are fucking fluent in what in English or what the Star Wars terminology is basic. Nathan, how about that? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I believe it's called Galactic Common.
Oh, Galactic Common, whatever it's called.
Actually, Harry.
Okay, I stand corrected.
I think that's what it was called. I think you make a pretty good point that removing Mace works better for the story because if they're going to introduce Noah like that as a father figure, yeah, I think that's actually a very good point. As far as the Ewoks now speaking English, I don't know, I'm kind of fine with it, although it seems, I guess, odd because we see it elsewhere in other Star Wars where people just speak their own language and everyone understands each other kind of thing. But I think this is more for the kids, right? And they can have maybe more because, again, it's just Sindel and Wicket. And with the two of them, the scenes probably just work a little bit better when they have a common language. And so the interaction, I thought that worked a lot better in this movie, was just those interactions because you actually are getting true conversations in there. And again, for kids, I think this just works maybe a little bit better.
No, I agree. I mean, it's shocking for me and it's a bit weird, but you don't have to worry about narration or losing a younger audience if just by having Ewoks talking and trying to figure out what's going on. Geoff, yourself, Ewoks talking, fluent.
Yeah, common. I think that's fine. Yeah, I thought there was some context for it because they learned some words in the first one, and if they've been around each other for, like, let's say another year, it didn't strike me as off. It was fine. And in fact, it's probably a good thing because then at least you can, stilted as it is, you can have some dialogue scenes with the Ewok characters. So yeah, I think that was all right.
Okay, so we talked about the family dying already. So how about our first glimpses of this new tribes people called the Marauders, who I guess apparently live also on Endor. I mean, where the fuck were they when the Empire was here? But that's okay. We don't really take this kind of stuff seriously. What did you think of them? The scenes of them invading the Ewok village there and kidnapping or taking prisoner all the Ewoks, Wicket and Sindel. Nathan, how about you start us off? What did you think of these scenes?
Actually, I kind of dug some of the action. I mean, I think actually the design of these Marauders is kind of cool. Sure, it doesn't really fit with what we know, but fuck it, we're going to go with it. Also, too, I mean, kind of what I said before about science fiction, sometimes you get like these monoplanets. And so it's kind of nice to see that, not everyone on Endor is an Ewok. Mm-hmm. There's maybe a couple of questions I have about who they are and what they're doing on Endor. But it's these action scenes, I thought, again, like, man, we're starting off dark. Like, the mom is already dead and they are blowing stuff up. And I could see this as being kind of scary for a kid because these Marauders are dark characters. And I think the staging for all of this actually worked really well too. And then sort of the interactions with the dad and stuff like that, it was weird maybe, but I did the woman, the witch, I guess. Mm-hmm. That was another kind of aspect of them that I thought was kind of neat.
So just to throw some trivia in here, just because when I was reading it, so that witch, she has been canonized in Star Wars lore as one of those, not Dothraki, the Dathomir Night Sister witches. So how she, if anyone who watched the Clone Wars, Darth Maul is from a planet called Dathomir, and apparently there are witches on that planet who have magical powers, and she has been, I forget this person's name, I can't remember, I think I have it written down somewhere, but regardless, she has been classified formally and officially as a Dathomir witch. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
The design of they were evocative of the Tusken Raiders. That's sort of the first thing I thought of. I thought the design was good and the action worked fine here. And, it was nice to finally see the police chief from Die Hard get what was coming to him. So I thought it was good.
Yeah, Paul Gleason, I was going to bring it up. He is from Die Hard. I did enjoy his scenes too with Sindel, although I think they went a little long. I did like how he got shot in the back and he kept running. He was toughing it out, and when he just made sure that he got his daughter away to safety and provided that kind of distraction. So I liked that. But yeah, he got what was coming to him.
Yeah.
The actor, unfortunately, Paul Gleason, has passed away. He died of lung cancer in 2006. So no Die Hard sequel for The Good Lieutenant or Bad Lieutenant, whichever one you want to classify him as. So let's move on. I also loved those scenes too. I thought the action was good. The tension was high. Production value, again, was very good. I loved seeing both. And this is kind of what I remembered the most from my childhood is King Tarek and the witch. Those were ingrained in the back of my brain as when I think back on these movies. So they kidnap Sindel, Wicket, and the Ewoks, and we get some more shots of stop motion creatures, which I thought were pretty cool, very reminiscent to dewbacks, but they were not dewbacks. Sindel and Wicket escape, and then we get them getting into a little chase with some other marauders, and they're all of a sudden halfway up a mountainside in 2 seconds, which I thought was pretty funny. They get into the cave, and Wicket starts building a hang glider, but then wakes up the pterodactyl. I love that scene where he's pulling on the bone to complete his hang glider, and the animal wakes up and then flies off with Sindel, and then you get the chase, and then they crash. Let's talk about all these scenes together. Jeff, how about you start us off here? What'd you think?
Maybe you guys can help me out here. I don't know how the quality of the feed that you got here, but the only version of this movie I could find was a really crappy, grainy version on YouTube. And I was trying to look through, I could still make out, I could still see it. I was trying to look through that. It just felt to me that this was suffering a lot from lack of budget here. The production values felt much lower to me than first one. So that was hurting it for me. I couldn't get into it because it looked so cheap.
No, actually, I kind of feel like the production value was actually good. In fact, I really liked the design of those not quite dewbacks. They almost looked like fish with giant legs and tiny arms. I thought, kind of if you look like a piranha almost, and they're like that flat shape.
Yep.
I really like the design of those creatures. So I think certainly when you're watching it like YouTube, it's probably, I don't know what version you watched. I have the DVD version of it. And yeah, I could sort of see, because these scenes are dark as well. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching something that is a very bad transfer, I could sort of see nothing coming through. But when I was watching, I was like, this actually looks pretty good. I did have a laugh when Sindel and Wicket are they're getting tons of distance on these guys, and their legs are half the length, and it's almost
they're half up the mountainside.
Yeah, exactly. So, but actually, I thought there's a lot of tension here because those guys are shooting at them, and other than that, minor quibble about the distance or whatever, I thought there's some pretty good tension there. That worked pretty well. And then they fall, they're gone. The building of the glider felt a little bit ridiculous just because it's you're in a cave of nothing. So MacGyvering it's a pretty good description of it. And again, I really like the design of that pterodactyl. Some of the scenes later on maybe didn't quite work, which we'll get into, but the little mini fight scene that he had there with Wicket, and Wicket's got the big bone and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. In fact, the creature effects in this movie look better than the last one, I thought.
I guess I partially agree. I think these scenes in particular here are a mixed bag. I liked the piranha creatures that we're talking about, and they show themselves up in the battle later. Those are cool. The bird-like creature here is good on that one stop-motion effect as he's approaching Wicket, and Wicket's got the bow or the spear. But when he takes off with Sindel, that is a bad effect. And when he's flying through the air, and then drops Sindel, and Wicket has to come and save her by positioning his hang glider underneath her. And then I thought these were all terrible scenes, but it seems that the bulk of the rest of the movie are mostly practical effects, and there may have been a cost with that associated with that as well. So it did maybe suffer from some budgetary issue here, but I thought overall these scenes were pretty good, except for when the bird grabs Sindel and flies through the air.
I agree. That was the part that I didn't like. That's what I was saying. Like, really, up to a point, like when Wicket has the little mini fight, and then that's where it stopped, and it was like, oh, okay, now this doesn't look good anymore. And then even just the scene itself was almost too ludicrous of the way he saved her, I thought.
Oh, yeah, it was not possible, and that's okay. This is just a kid's movie. Let's move on. So they crash and they just fall asleep in the forest. They're really in an unexplored area of Endor, at least for where the Ewoks typically explore and have their village. They must be pretty far away. They wake up to another creature, Teak. What do you guys think of Teak? The design, and let's talk about not just Teak himself. Then you're getting into the treehouse or the house, and you meet Noah finally. What did you think of all of these introductory scenes to these characters and initial interactions with Sindel and Wicket? Geoff, please start us off.
So Teak was like the sloth version Ewok, right? Like the messed up looking thing, right? Is that right?
Well, he's the guy who moves fast.
Yeah. I like the design of that creature. I thought that looked good. Like there was lots of detail there. It was different. So that worked for me. Meeting Noah, again, like I knew Wilford Brimley was in it, but it's sort of weird to see him in this context. This type of TV movie was really weird. He can't play anything other than a crotchety old bastard. So I guess they found the right guy. You know, if they wanted Obi-Wan Kenobi to be an older, overweight bum, then I guess this is the guy they would have cast to play him. And he does a good job. I mean, Wilford Brimley's a good actor. So
yeah, I love Wilford Brimley.
Yeah, he's actually had some really good roles. Again, he's not going to be playing a ballerina or anything like that, but he was good. So that was fine. That worked all right.
You know, one thing I really liked about Teak actually was that his costume was quite a bit better than some of the Ewoks. Because when you look at their Ewoks' hands, I noticed later on, they're just like giant mitts. And his are like very, like he's got all 5 fingers and very articulated.
Yeah, it's more interesting.
Yeah, and all the makeup prosthetics on the face. So you can see the actor, you know, kind of doing stuff. So I thought like his design, I was very confused about, like he's from Endor, I guess, because it seemed as though Wicket knew what he was.
Mm-hmm. And he said trouble.
Yeah, trouble. So I thought it was, okay, this is cool. Again, like more interesting. I almost feel like they just should build like a whole TV show about Endor and all like the weird inhabitants. And these are scenes, again, for kids, kind of, right? So they're silly and slapsticky. So that's their purpose. And I think they work for that. And then I think the introduction of Noah, I didn't look up anything about the movie beforehand. So I was actually rather surprised to see that it was Wilford Brimley. Mm-hmm. Like, whoa, that kind of blew me away for a second. And then there were times, and this is maybe just an overall thing about him, but there were times where he felt maybe a little out of place in this Star Wars world. But other times I thought he is a very good actor. So when he was being crotchety and curmudgeon-y, like he did that really well. And I think I was like, you're all by yourself. You're with this little creature. This 8-year-old girl comes around and you're going to kick her out. Like, that's cold, man. Like, I laughed because it was like, this movie is dark. Like, it is dark, right? I mean, you killing off family. You got this guy's like 8-year-old, get out of here, go off into the forest. And so I kind of liked it, actually. I was pretty invested up into this point.
Well, that's interesting. I love Teak. Teak will always have a soft spot for me. He is the one thing that I always remember back fondly. I love the design. I love the creature. I love the character. I like his relationship with Noah. I agree with you. Wilford Brimley, he comes across, I mean, it's a little surprising and maybe slightly unbelievable that he would just kick out an 8-year-old girl. I could understand if it was just Wicket to get the fuck out of here, furball. But yeah, that's a bit unbelievable. I think that's just for story purposes, so he'll eventually warm up to her later and I can let that go. But I do love Wilford Brimley. I think he fits well into the role. He could fit into the Star Wars universe, in my opinion, but this is more of a kid's movie, so it still fits very well. I liked all of these scenes. How did Wicket know how to make muffins? Because when he kicked him out, he goes, oh, they made porridge and muffins. So I'm wondering what kind of food the Ewoks eat. I thought they're just meat eaters, but that's okay. I like the scenes that when Teak...
It was bone meal, Harry. They ground it up from the bones of their victims.
Oh, yeah, bone meal. There you go. That's right. That's a good catch there, Geoff.
How do you get bone meal to rise?
Well, you just, I don't know, the Force. They have magic. You saw it.
Any comments on the relationship we see between Noah and Teak? As you mentioned, he's grumpy, he's crotchety. To me, that kind of feels normal and expected because he's been trapped here for God knows how long. I've done the research. I tried to figure out when they crash or anything. They will not give any idea of how long he's been stranded there, but it has obviously been for some time because you do see his friend Salak in the Marauder prison and he's just dust and bones. So it must be for a very long time. So you can understand that he would be apprehensive and just always grumpy. But I liked their back and forth between each other, and I love Teak's reactions, like when he's kind of always shouting at Teak, and Teak's kind of just bashful and shy and playful, but then he always comes back to him because they just have that bond. It's almost a little bit like Han and Chewie in a sense, because Han always yells at Chewie, and you think if it wasn't for the life debt, why would Chewie want to be around this guy? But eventually there's just some relationships that are just naturally like that. You have the dominant, you have the passive, and they just kind of gel perfectly. And I liked that relationship here.
Yeah,
I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I sort of felt the impression that it was like Teak was
almost like his sanity check or his conscience.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, how about the Marauder's castle? So we cut back there. So we see the man himself, King Tarek, just keep on declaring, I want the power. And this must be like Trump in his own hotel suite. Like he's sitting there every day in his bed. So what did you think of the set, Tarek here, the scenes where you're seeing the Red Woman trying to perform some magic because they're all bewildered about this power converter? Is that correct? I know I used that in my plot summary. Is this a power converter? I'm assuming it is. Like, what is a power converter? Or this is a power cylinder. I called it power converter.
Well, later it's also kind of referred to as like an oscillator.
Is it an oscillator?
Like, yeah, well, when Noah's in his ship and he's like, oh, we gotta get the power regulator, something else, and power oscillator. I'm like, well, what is it? Just pick one.
We'll stick with power converter. We'll stick with power.
Yeah, but I don't know what is power converter. Converting it from what?
I have no idea. That's why they were so perplexed.
Converting it to.
Anyways, you're seeing these scenes here, the set design and them and Tarek just wanting the power. Bit weak for me. I did like the sets. I did like the relationship, the abusive relationship between Tarek and the Red Woman there, the witch. Any thoughts on this one? It's not much here, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I was sort of thrown a little bit by... Because they would sometimes have some back and forth in English and then sometimes in just some other language. And so sometimes I wouldn't be listening because they're not saying anything in English. Then they switched to English, like, oh, well, I didn't catch that. And they did that numerous times. And I don't really like that. I thought the set design was pretty good sometimes. And maybe actually this was later, but I think like for this scene in this, I guess, like throne room, set design is good, maybe not great. It just looks like a castle, I guess. And they're like, okay, we're going to dress up this room, make it look good. Purpose of this scene really is giving us a background on what the villains want, what is their purpose. And for the life of me, I could not figure out who they really were. And like, okay, we need this convert. But then is this the scene where they say we have to go after the girl?
No, not
It's
yet.
not yet? Okay,
No.
We'll get to that then. So these scenes were just fine for me. They're fine.
Geoff?
I think I feel the same way, that the scenes are just okay. I thought the set design was good. I like the design of the villains. I think they did a pretty good... I mean, maybe the quality of it is a little thin, like it looks like a rubber mask, but it's a cool design. There's good detail. He does look scary, so it's okay. As Nathan said, it's sort of the henchman hanging out in the lair describing what the evil plans are going to be for the rest of the movie, so you're not going to get anything too complex here, the type of movie that we're in, so that's okay. So it's fine. I'm not put off.
I like the set design. I like the way they look, but I agree with you guys. I think they needed something more here saying, I want the power, but for what? And maybe if it was to power something, they had found another item and it could have been a weapon and they interpreted correctly that it's a weapon and that can harm other life on Endor or something like that. I thought that would be a bit more interesting, and just him saying simply, I want the power. Is he going to fucking start and break out and dance to that song? Like, I've got the power or whatever.
Well, I started thinking of He-Man right away, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to think he's that, I have the power.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. Star Wars He-Man crossover. That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Okay, so now let's cut to some more bonding scenes here between Sindel, Wicket, and Noah and Teak. So Sindel and Wicket are continuing to get tough love from Noah. He's saying, okay, you can stay the night, but I want you gone in the next morning. And then he kind of changes his mind, saying he can stay, and they're all eating food together. And then one day, Wicket and Sindel follow him to see what he's doing. He doesn't want him there, and they find his ship. And then you get some cutscenes of Sindel missing her family, and she's talking to either Wicket or Noah or both about this. You have some messages here. I wrote it down. You have some messages here from Noah to Sindel saying it's tough, and he's talking about his own friend Salik, how he's gone, but you only have to remember the good things and not the bad things and not the sad things. And these are some more messages that are aimed towards kids. Did you like any of these scenes, these bonding scenes between them? Did they work for you? Were they too sappy? Or they were just filler? Nathan, how about you go first?
I thought there was some filler because he kept changing his mind over and over again. But like, okay, I guess we need to pad this out just a little bit for TV. But actually, after they follow him to the ship, it was like, oh, this is a neat revelation, right? Because now we're learning a little bit more about this old man. I thought the bonding scenes after that worked a little bit better, but kind of leading up to it, like there was something off about it because like he's being curmudgeon-y, and yet some of the scenes were also, I felt like they're trying to play it to comedy a little bit. And so I didn't feel like they meshed those two things very well. But it was later on, especially when Sindel was having kind of trouble reconciling this idea that her family is gone. A lot of this too is Wilford Brimley like really delivering as an actor in some of these scenes.
Yeah, I really like the scenes where I think it could have been when she was having nightmares, and then he's like holding her and just comforting her and letting her take the bed. And then, as I said, talking to her, you have to remember the good things and all that stuff. I mean, I loved all that scenes. And yeah, Wilford Brimley did a really good job there. Jeff, how about yourself?
Well, it's good to have an actor of his caliber classing up the joint when you have, I mean, let's face it, pretty heavy dialogue in the hands of a poor actor. That stuff really doesn't come off very well, but he does a good job. It's when Liam Neeson was in Phantom Menace. I mean, it didn't matter what his lines were. When he says it, he can pull it off, and getting a little bit of that here, it helps to sell. Okay, we got a TV movie that's geared towards kids. We're not going to get a lot of nuance. We're getting the broad strokes of messages here. So that is just going to be the type of movie that we're watching here. So that's okay. But great to have him here to help stir some brown sugar into that oatmeal.
Okay, let's move on. So the witch, as she was able to shapeshift into a crow, finds out where Sindel is. And King Terran, we had those scenes now where King Terran's telling her to bring Sindel because for some reason he thinks she'll be able to unlock the power, even though no adult knows how to figure it out. So she calls out to Sindel in the middle of the night. I think she may have overheard her talking about a special song her mom had sung, and she starts singing it to her, and she has shapeshifted into a different woman with blonde hair. And again, another horse is there, and then kidnap Sindel. So Noah, Teak, and Wicket then go to rescue her. And I love the little montage here when they're getting ready to go rescue Sindel. Like Wicket is putting explosives in a bag and grabbing a grappling hook. And then I love the scene here where Noah's getting dressed, and you see the close-ups of his belly, and the plastic snap buckles are closing over it. It's like,
yeah.
Like,
it was akin to seeing like an actor get dressed as Batman.
Yeah.
It was as powerful as that.
Yeah, and then Teak's like, and then I love also the shots of Teak because they're all concerned and getting ready, and Teak's still lying there in bed, and he's scratching his head saying, what the fuck is going on here? And it's great. He ends up following them, but I love these scenes. Jeff, how about you start us off here? I know these are quick scenes, but did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it put a smile on my face there. Yeah, I kind of wanted Sindel to like tie her bandana across her forehead there, but we see it from the back, like Rambo style. That would have been a good shot. It's good. It's goofy, but it's fun.
I have to say, I'm almost embarrassed that I was almost like a little bit surprised when the woman turned into the witch, because it's a totally different actress. I was like, what is going on? Is this another like weird Endor trap thing? So when it was the turn, I was like, oh, okay, now I get it, right? But I felt so embarrassed. I just didn't understand it because it was a different actress. Yeah, these are all kind of quick scenes. I did love that like gearing up montage because again, like this is kind of like a few years before we get more of that. I feel like
I remember there was that Mr. T show where they would every single week when he was about to go kick somebody's ass, they showed like the close-ups of him tying up his boots and putting on
he would
his
change
belt and
was it TNT?
yeah, TNT or
Is that
what?
the name?
TNT.
Yeah,
TNT, yeah.
that's it.
And he was a lawyer.
Yes.
And then at the end of every episode, he would get out of his suit because he always wore a suit.
Yeah.
Put on like camo pants and a tank top and go kick some ass. But wasn't that no? TNT must have come after this.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm just kind of a staple of the 80s.
Okay. I thought it was like, are they ripping off TNT?
No, I mean, even in Rambo, they had the same thing. Like Rambo gets dressed, especially in the first two sequels. This is how he kind of gets ready for battle.
Right. This had more of we've seen this literally a million times. We're going to do it again, but it kind of was sort of within the context. I think it's just a little bit funnier because this is a newer thing and it's more of I don't know. I feel like this is something, for something like Rambo, which is not a movie for children necessarily. So this is, I don't know. It made me laugh. I thought, not laughing at it, but I was
it made me laugh in a good way, not a mocking way.
Yes. Yeah, I was having fun with it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And when Wicket had that grappling hook, I laughed because it didn't match. Because it's like, okay, well, it's a grappling hook. I mean, I kind of feel like he should have had like a machine gun or something like that too with him. I mean, it's just again, I laughed at that.
Mm-hmm. Geoff, you already provided your thoughts here, right?
Yeah.
All right. They cut to back at the Marauder Castle. King Tarek is now seriously getting frustrated and he's interrogating Sindel and keeps saying, all I want is the fucking power. Make it work. And like she's saying, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. I just put it as in my notes. I mentioned it in my plot summary here. I really wonder, is this really how the Klingon Empire made their way out when they first ventured into space? Like something crashed on their planet and they were trying to say, just make it work so they could finally get into space? I mean, this is kind of how I felt that would happen.
No, it's more like those other guys, those guys who need things to make them go.
Oh, yes.
The pack lads. The
pack lads, yeah. The pack lads, yeah. So these are like the pack lads here. Okay.
Yeah.
In his frustration, Tarek not only puts Sindel in a prison cell, but also the Red Woman, the priestess, or the Dathomir witch, and he takes the magic ring from her. And now we see Noah, Teak, and Wicket start to infiltrate King Tarek's castle, and you get that wall climbing scene and another lethal body of water. And you get Wicket and Teak coming up and then saving Noah from being shot on the ground. And what did you think of that? I mean, Geoff, anything fun here for you, or this is just kind of...
I was actually going to say,
Okay. How about yourself there, Nathan?
This is where the villains started to lose me a bit, because now they're really coming across as low rent. I mean, this is a small child who obviously knows nothing. Like, so they're treating it like she's some sort of powerful character. There was something about it that just didn't work for me. And I was also, again, I was getting confused about, we want the power. And they're just saying that over and over again without any real meaning behind it. But again, it's like, you guys have blasters. I couldn't understand if they were actually from Endor or not.
Mm-hmm.
I was very confused about that. Like, had they crash landed? Because they didn't seem to know anything about ships or anything.
Yeah,
Yet
I mean, that's why I wish they had a scene showing why they want the power.
Yeah.
Had something else where they think is not working. It's like the Pac-Man, as you mentioned.
Yeah, because again, I don't know why there was like a choice to not do any more exposition this way, because when they kept saying we want the power to this small child, it was kind of losing me. As far as the getting into the castle and stuff like that, I really started thinking about Skyrim a lot and the way I would sneak into a castle and stuff like that. I don't know why I started getting those feels. But yeah, don't go into a body of water on Endor.
No, I mean, what was with that bubble? Again, another lethal body of water.
And I couldn't understand was it a creature under there?
I think it's a magic moat that it's just going to bubble and just eat up whatever it touches.
Yeah, because at one point, like when he put the stick in, it seemed to kind of burn it a bit. But then there was one point where it seemed as though the bubbles would follow Wicket when his foot was kind of in the water. And I actually kind of wonder if that was like a stunt that just went wrong, and then the actor was never supposed to be in the water, but they just didn't get it right and his foot dragged through. So like, whatever, we'll just try and make it work somehow. Yeah, I don't know. Not much going on here, but yeah, the villains are losing me a little bit at this point.
No, I agree with you. The villains here with the I want the power from Tarek here, this is really bad. I wish they expanded on this in some fashion. But I did like the infiltration into Tarek's castle. I did like the lethal body of water. It's consistent with what we've seen before. Another little magical nugget to add to any of this. So, and then the Wicket and Teak are badasses. I love some of the humor here because this is, again, for kids, how they tie the guy up at the top, drop him, and then that lifts the Wilford Brimley, because Wilford Brimley ain't climbing that wall. So this is really the only way he's going to get in. So I like those scenes. And I want to make mention here, because I think we were cutting back and forth between some of the scenes inside the castle. You're seeing Marauder's troop here definitely remind me of Klingons. They're drunkards. They're drinking blood wine pretty much. They're violent to each other, like they're punching each other a little bit or wrestling with each other. I liked those scenes specifically because they did remind me of Klingon. And then now we get to Teak versus the guards playing poker so he can rescue Sindel and get the keys, prison keys. And I loved all of these scenes. Did you guys like any of this stuff here? Was it too goofy or sappy? This kind of feels right up the alley of classic George Lucas and a magical Star Wars feel for me, but that's just me. Geoff, how about yourself?
I think I agree, at least tonally consistent with the George Lucas. This part of the movie, for whatever reason, that's the first thing I thought, is like, this feels like George and his influence here. I know he wrote the story. So, I mean, for better or worse, yeah, it worked fine. It captures the tone. I mean, there's certain, I know you've been kind of saying this all along, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You definitely got to give them a break when you're shooting a movie that's geared towards kids. It is a little silly. It's got some kind of charm that, I mean, George isn't always able to inject it in the movies that he's involved with, but when he's able to, it's unmistakable, and it often works really well because it's sort of light and yet almost grimy at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I do, because like you have the trickery here with Teak doing the cards, then his hand getting caught or being sat on, and he's in pain, and you get the lovely expressions of that suit, like the mask, and I like that. I got a kick out of that. I thought that was pretty funny. And then in typical George Lucas style, he's not shying away from kind of that violence. The guards get up and shoot each other and they die, and I thought that was
that was good. Yeah,
that was really, it felt right in place. And as I said, it also, felt right in place in any Star Trek TV show that we've ever seen. So seeing that now, I really do get a kick out of it. How about you, Nathan?
Well, one thing we kind of skipped over was the way they snuck in was Ewok.
Oh, yes.
Or Ewok Wicket sitting on Noah's shoulders.
Yeah, I personally there. Like that. That's probably why I didn't write it down.
Yeah, I thought that was a little too goofy, but and also it's like again, like these villains are just kind of being a bunch of dummies. I did like, though, some of the scenes that they show where they're all just having their feast or whatever, and it was very much like Klingons. They're fighting and drinking and stuff like that. The scene with Teak and getting his hand sat on there, I agree with Geoff. There's a charm to it that I liked, and it was at least consistent with the rest of the movie. But then I was like, well, they're playing poker, but what are they playing for? Is like, is there money now in Endor? It was strange, very strange to me.
Fighting for the power, man.
For the power. But you're right. It's that strange thing where we have this humorous scene and then they just get up and murder each other just right there. So yeah, I think it kind of worked. I was kind of smiling throughout it, even though it's like, this is for kids. I guess it works.
All right, so now we get the Ewok escape because they got the keys and the guards are dead. So Ewoks pick up the guns, which I always find hilarious and partially awesome. The scenes here are played for laughs, but let's talk about their escape as they leave here. So Noah puts a charge on, I believe that's what it's called, onto a wall or near a window, blows it up. Noah also grabs the converter or whatever we're calling it, oscillator. I think it was here is also, he does glance very briefly at the skeleton and the remains of his friend Salak, because Sindel mentions it to him. And then we also get which felt like it was going on for a while, the grappling hook cable in every single prisoner coming down that one. And then you also have the guards chasing them, and then they're also getting into trouble on that magical moat outside. What did you think of the castle escape here, the moment with Salak, even though it was very brief, and the outside of the castle there with the moat?
Well, Brimley really delivered on the look and the moment. So I think maybe we could have expanded on it a little bit more. But again, because of the context of the scene, he's not going to dwell on it too much. But a lesser actor could not have sold it the way he did. I thought that there was a bit of an issue with how the length of this scene, because you're right. I don't know why we had to see every single Ewok slide down. You just like one or two. Okay, we get it. And because then that also created a bit of a problem for me with the Wicket and the other Ewok that are fighting the Marauders. a few shots of that was actually pretty good, but I wish that the scene was just maybe a little bit shorter. Also, Sindo leaves the witch in the prison, who we didn't really talk about. What's the main marauder's name again? I forget.
Tarek?
He put the red woman in there, basically saying, yeah, I'm going to kill you too if you don't help me figure this out. And Sindo leaves her in there. And I was like, that's some cold-blooded shit right there.
Well, she did kidnap her.
I know, but it's still like a little girl. It's like,
yeah, I know. I can let that go because she was there when they were.
I'm not saying I disliked it. I'm not saying I disliked her or it didn't fit, but I was like, whoa, that was like, because I kind of feel like I thought that she was going to let her go or something like that. It's like, going to be the nice little girl and be betrayed or whatever, but she's like, no. So she's really taken a page out of
growing up.
Well, she is. Well, she obviously trained at Cobra Kai. No mercy. So I wish the scene was maybe the escape was a little bit shorter, or they did a couple of different things, because they're just sort of running through hallways, shooting stuff and making it fall on the marauders.
Yeah.
And they did that a bunch of times. Like, you just do it once, now do something else. But overall, I mean, it played out well, I think, and then, for a kid, it's probably fine.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Geoff? Do you like any of these scenes?
It was fine. I think it lacked any real tension because it was too long. And maybe that's an editing problem as well. Like we've already said, like all 300 Ewoks, we had to watch them all escape. And I don't really know why that was necessary. But that was a good scene with Wilford Brimley looking at the skeleton of his friend there. That was a highlight. But other than that, it's just okay. And that's because I think the tension's not there. When you have an escape scene, when you're running, that's the most important part of that scene. If you don't have that, then it falls a little flat. Unfortunately, I think that was the case here.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that mainly seeing all those Ewoks coming down the grappling hook, that was completely unnecessary. And I thought they were playing it for laughs because these were little people kicking and, motions and then hitting the rock at the bottom. And I thought they were trying to play it for laughs over and over again, and which was not necessary. And it kind of didn't totally fit with this film, having that. But maybe because they thought it was dark, they wanted to throw a few of those things in there. I did like the scene with Wilford Brimley looking at Salak, his friend, but my goodness, that was such a quick beat. He played it well. In my opinion, there needed to be more there. I'm not saying he has to drop on his knees and, sulk and, feel remorse in front of the remains, but do something else there. At least have him show a little bit more emotion there, or just pause on his face for a few seconds. And then he just says, okay, I got to go because we're in a tense scene. But the one scene, you guys didn't mention this, that I loved, and again, how I was howling in laughter, was after the Ewoks got away, someone cut, because they had the grappling hook and it was tied up inside. Then you see Tarek walking and he's pissed and he's got a sword out and that thing's in the way. He just cuts it and inadvertently the other two guys fall on the outside and you hear them scream to death.
I love that.
Oh yeah.
I love that because they don't cut to the outside part.
No, and
which
you know
I
what?
thought was really great. You just hear it.
You just hear it and you hear them scream, and you know what that reminded me of? This is so George Lucas. This reminded me of that scene when Vader's talking to the holograms and the one guy died. You remember the asteroid hit and then his hologram fades away
just
and it's
fades off.
Brilliant. Just brilliant. I love that. For me, that was a highlight of this scene here, and I loved it. So now we are going to have the epic finale of this movie, as epic as it can get, the battle for Endor. Not the battle of Endor, but for Endor. So King Tarek and his men are chasing all the Ewoks, and the Ewoks, Noah, Wicket, Sindel, Teak, they all make it back to the ship, and we got some tense stuff happening on the outside and inside the ship. Noah's trying to power the ship up. We got the battles happening on the outside. We see some more stop motion effects with those creatures. Get some classic Return of the Jedi type battles here. What do you guys think? Geoff, I'll give you the honor of starting first, talking about all of this battle. Let's just go all the way up to when Tarek has enough and kidnaps Sindel. Let's just talk about the general battle, which is the bulk of these scenes here. Go first.
The scale of it is pretty good for a TV show, so I'll give it credit there. Maybe a bit jumbled in spots because it's hard to portray the scale on the small screen. But I think they did a pretty good job. It works. Again, in context, it works fairly well. So I was okay with it.
But did you enjoy it? I mean, there's one thing of saying I was okay with it. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, as far as enjoyment, I mean, that's maybe a question better left for our wrap-up thoughts, because it's not a yes or no question.
Oh, okay. Nathan.
Well, I will say that I did like this battle up to a point. I think it just dragged because after a while, there was no variety. And this is sort of like a kind of a problem, like overall with both of these movies where the scenes, like certain scenes drag out and we're not really doing anything new necessarily. I thought it started really strong. I liked the escape into the forest. I thought some of the creature effects here with those weird piranhas with legs. I thought they looked really good because you have live action and then you have the creatures coming through. And I thought for 1985, it looked good. I thought that a lot of the overall, like the combination of the staging with some of the camera work and the editing worked really well. I started to get bored a little bit towards the end because I'm like, okay, I get it. And the tension just got to a certain point and just sort of stayed there. And now we're just kind of having scenes that, for a kid who loves Star Wars, like this is just more the end battle of Jedi. And we're just going to keep pumping it out for the kids kind of thing. So started off strong for me and then tapered off. I started getting bored.
Interesting. No, I loved every minute of this. I thought I was really surprised at the scale of what I saw and the amount of what I saw. I mean, you get the classic Return of the Jedi stuff with the Ewoks rolling logs and swinging into troops. And I was again surprised to see that with their bow and arrows, how many actual deaths you see of these marauders getting hit with the arrows, and it's penetrated them, and it's clear death, and it's more visceral. And I thought that was surprising. I was very surprised to see this, and I thought there was variety. Then you also get Teak tying the one guy up with his around the tree with the rope, and he's using his speed.
I thought that was pretty funny.
That was funny. You still have
laughed at that.
Yeah, and then Teak was the one who got those piranha creatures upset and causing the stampede, or them running away at least, which screws the troops up because he lit the little fire near their toes. I mean, I loved all that stuff. And then, I don't know, I was assuming, I don't know, maybe you guys didn't include this, but we can include this here, is then when Noah finally gets the ship up and running, I love the fact that they got into the gunner cockpits. And Noah's also one of them. And
yeah.
I loved all that stuff. And then the Ewoks were catapulting a thermal detonator, causing the explosions. I mean, those explosions were all practical effects. It looked great. I was laughing my ass off, and the Ewok catapulted himself.
Yeah.
Landed on a marauder and started beating the shit. I loved it. Ewoks are badass, man. I can't believe it. It was great. So for me, I loved all these scenes. So now we get to Tarek has enough. His men have run away, those that have survived, and he grabs Sindel. Unfortunately, Sindel had to go through that trope and run outside because I think Wicket was in trouble. And he challenges Noah to come out here or he'll kill her. And he just wants to get the converter again. And then Noah's a man. He brings out, he says, you know what? How about we just fight for it? Let's settle it here and it's done. You win, you get it, and so on. And you get their little fight. Geoff, I'll give you the honor of Wilford Brimley versus King Tarek. Go.
This is the tree branch versus broadsword fight.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
this
well,
one here?
His walking stick.
Right, his walking stick, right. Well, it was brief.
It wasn't as brief as I thought. It is brief. It's not long. I would say maybe slightly shorter than the A New Hope battle between Obi-Wan and Vader. I mean, obviously, it's not. But it wasn't like just one swing or two swings and it's done.
No, it wasn't. It was. I smiled. Yeah, trying to find the right positive. I smiled because it feels Star Wars like, because it's a sword fight, even though it's not lightsabers. So it has that element to it that, fits the fantasy world. But Wilford Brimley, or a double, is just kind of swinging his stick sort of in the air between the two, and the other guy's just blocking it. So it's not really any sword fighting going on there. And because it felt pretty obvious to me, there isn't a lot of tension to that little skirmish. It was a neat little touch to have it in there because it feels like it's a callback to Star Wars, but there isn't much more than that there for me.
Okay. How about then how it ends with Wicket saving Noah with the slingshot? He throws the pebble, hits the magic ring, and what happens to King Tarek there? Did this work for you?
Yeah, not really. It feels a little, I don't know if convenience is the right word for it. It just, again, it kind of fits, but destroy the magic artifact or whatever, and everything's okay. It's kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons thing, as Nathan's been alluding to. So the villains aren't very well drawn. And when they're not very well drawn, the defeat of those villains then also feels the same way. Like there isn't anything interesting or clever about how they beat them. It's just, here's what happened. Like it's like Legend of Zelda. You shoot the silver arrow at Ganon's heart and then he dies and you win. And I guess that's okay. It didn't really do anything for me.
How about yourself, Nathan?
So, I mean, the fight here, I mean, second only to Patrick Swayze and Ben Gazzara in Roadhouse, I think. Yeah, I'm not going to fault this fight. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of understand like this was sort of the lead up, but I mean, again, Wilford Brimley kind of sells it a little bit. I mean, with the stunt double's not really selling it so much. And I thought the choreography of it maybe wasn't great. I did kind of like the end of it, but I thought I did like that Wicket. I didn't realize he was going to throw the ring. I thought it was just going to be like a rock and just like, knock. And it was going to be like a comedic thing and he was going to knock him out. But because the ring has like a strange role in the movie, it seemed odd that they would use the ring in order to defeat the villain, because the ring was never like a MacGuffin in the movie. And so I thought it was a strange choice. And then when it was like, I couldn't understand what was actually happening, he like kind of turns to stone. And I feel like maybe that would be sort of the best way to kill the villain in this movie for children, because it's still kind of creepy. I think for kids it'd be a little bit scary. I was a little put off by like the whole look of it, and everything that was happening is like, ooh, kind of gross actually. So I think for a kid it's like, oh, that's like a great death. But I still feel like the choice to use the ring when like the ring was never a thing. Right. So I thought it was strange to turn that on the villain, because it was not like that was ever used against our protagonists ever. And so to suddenly take it, and I get it, but it's like, well, we need something here, I guess. There's something weird about it. I think I liked it a lot much more than Geoff did. But by this point, I'm kind of glad, like, okay, now we're kind of resolved with this.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more soft on these scenes. I think that while I agree with you guys and I hear what you're saying, that the ring was not really the MacGuffin to begin with, so all of a sudden it's used to stop the main antagonist, I still felt it was appropriate because he was just completely searching for power. And this ring, again, maybe it's still a fault of the movie because the ring isn't explained, and he grabs the ring from her and he starts wearing it as a necklace because he just wants power. So it felt tonally appropriate that this is how he got his comeuppance. So I liked it. This scene, I wouldn't say freaked me out as a kid, but this is the one scene with him turning into a burnt corpse that kind of stuck with me when I remember thinking back in my memory to the Battle for Endor. So I did like this scene. I think it is kind of freaky for kids, and I like that. The actual Wilford Brimley versus Tarek fight, I mean, Wilford Brimley or a stunt double is pretty spry. It's not the worst sword fight I have ever seen. It's certainly not anywhere near amazing, and it was long enough. I like the fact that Tarek got the upper hand fairly quickly, and that's when Wicket had to save Noah, because Noah was never a fighter. He was just a guy who, I guess, wanted to explore the universe and party it up or whatever. So I thought that was kind of an appropriate ending to Tarek, and also the Red Woman, because now she doesn't have the ring anymore. She's stuck as the Crow for the remainder of her life. At least that's what we're meant to presume. So again, I thought that was appropriate, and it's a good message for kids. These are lessons which George is probably trying to do. It says life isn't always about power and greed and being mean and evil. So these are the consequences of what happens. So I like these kind of simple messages. So we get our farewell here. Noah, because his ship is now powered up, him and Sindel will leave. Teak will stay with the Ewoks. I really liked the effect shot of the ship taking off, and you could see the other planet or moon in the skyline there. I thought these were really nice things. I really thought that Teak and Wicket were going to kiss at the end. It kind of felt like that, but it was kind of sad. I wasn't emotional, but you get the feels a little bit there. Nice touching scene. Sindel and Noah finally go off to explore some other areas of space or find a home. I did my research, if you guys would ever doubt your Noah simply retired in the mid-rim. That's the only footnote for his character. Sindel, however, was used in some novelizations. I've only read the Thrawn trilogy, but apparently she was used in other novels, and she ended up a journalist on Coruscant, got involved in a few stories, in a few novelizations. So they did use her. She looks like she did have a life and a happy ending, and that's good to see, and happy to hear that or read that. What'd you guys think of this ending? Nathan, please go first.
I got a bit of the feels on this. I felt a little bit, sad that Sindel is leaving Wicket and Noah's leaving Teak. I was like a little surprised at first, like, I thought Teak was just going to go with Noah. That's just how it was going to go down. But the shots of the ship I thought looked really good. And the planet, is that Endor?
Yeah, I
Because
guess
they're on
that's
the moon of
because
Endor.
they're on the
So
moon.
would that
Yeah,
be
so
Endor?
then that's Endor. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I thought that this was a really nice, sweet ending for this movie. And I think it would probably play well to kids. You know, it would be sad for them. It's kind of like the ending of E.T. a little bit.
Jeff.
I didn't like the ending at all. I was a little confused as to why they left at all. This
Noah's
is
been
kind
stuck
of
there a while. He wants to leave.
yeah, but it's kind of his home now. He's got, I mean, Teak is his family, and
Well, he can't be raised there.
Sindel. Well,
He's gotta
I
do
mean,
something for
but
Sindel.
he's the only one who can raise her now anyway, I guess, because bad luck. You ran into an orphan guy. She's now your responsibility. I mean, why can't he raise her there? Is he like in the mid rim or Coruscant or what? I mean, none of that makes any sense. Like their family's here, like Wicket's her family.
Well, I will drop this line. They specifically say, I think, in this movie earlier on, that when Sindel lost her family and Wicket's there, I think it's right in the first scene that she has to leave. She has to go to school. She has to learn.
Oh, God.
Which is
I forgot
stupid.
all about that.
Terrible dialogue. But the message here to me is that she can't stay there because all Wicket's going to say is Star Cruiser and here's my slingshot move and let's go fishing.
Well,
she's not a native to that planet. This is, to me, is natural. I'm surprised that you're having a problem with this scene.
If she still had her family, okay, so here's a couple things that would make it work. She still had her family and they hadn't all died, then they can all go home or whatever. If Endor was some kind of hellscape, then yeah, you got to escape that place. But I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, it's a good place. Like there's like
the
Ewoks
fact
are there.
there's Gorax or other Goraxes, weird alien creatures.
It's the Australia of space, man. It's way too dangerous.
In the Star Wars universe, everywhere's the Australia of outer space. I mean, you've got ice planets that have creatures that will hang you from their ceiling. You've got desert planets that have creatures that are just Coruscant. Mouths and teeth. I mean, there's so many other worse places out there, unless you end up on Naboo or something like that. I mean, the whole galaxy's a minefield of death traps all over the place. It's just like, okay, well, we're going to get in the thing and go so I can go to school. I mean, who's this old guy? Like, what school's he going to take her to? I mean, all of these things, just like, you know what? You're probably better off. He has a nice hut in the forest there.
Oh, man.
Do you not remember Star Wars Galaxies? We went to the forest moon of Endor, and we were well armed, and we didn't do well.
No, we did not do that.
Remember, we had to run everywhere to get away from everything.
But we didn't have a tribe of Ewoks who were our best friends. I mean, I was just like, well, they got on the ship and they're flying away. I'm like, what? Where are they going? Like, where are they going? Where are they going? Do they have any plan for anything? They're going to go where? Like, he's been out of the game for probably, I want to say it's probably been 20 years that Noah's been stranded on.
So you're telling me
moon.
you're in this position. She may have other family out there, and maybe not parents or something. You saying we have to explore this. He's been stuck there wanting to leave, even though he's developed a home and Teak is his family and all that stuff. I mean, I agree. Even when I was a kid, I said, why is Teak staying? That kind of sucked. He should be going with Noah. But if I was in this position, I can completely see me leaving as well. I mean, it's a sad...
I think if it would have been a bit more poignant.
It's doing the right thing to Sindel. It's doing the right thing. Yeah, man. Yeah, you're talking from a guy who doesn't have kids. I'm telling you right now.
But you don't have kids in the Star Wars galaxy. It's a totally different thing.
Well, I'm telling you that she ended up on Coruscant.
Well,
that's
why
the official canon.
I mean, that's not official canon. Those are old novels, which are now legends, which were never canon in the first place.
Well, that's more than your head canon.
That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
Anyways, that's fine. That's your interpretation. That's okay. That's good.
I think it would have been more poignant if he had decided to stay. That's what I think. I think it would have made more sense for the story.
I just look at also two movies. The family has not gotten off. She has not left. She needs to leave. He needs to leave. He's stuck there a long time. It's best for her to leave. She will have a better life outside of Endor.
They robbed us of the possibility of an Ewok Adventure 3. This time it's personal. And I will never forgive them for that.
Okay, well, we will see if you are actually craving an Ewok Adventure 3. Guys, we are done 2 movies here. Let's get into our thoughts, final thoughts of each. You can combine your thoughts of both movies. Nathan, I'll let you start first. What are your thoughts of Caravan of Courage and the Battle for Endor? Did you enjoy watching these movies? What are the strengths and weaknesses experiences? Is it a recommendation? Is it a rare antiquity?
So I was actually surprised at how much I did like them. I mean, I think they're not really all that good. And I think it's mostly just because they're both a little bit too long and they are definitely geared for children. But I found myself entertained more often than not. Sure, I'd get bored at times. And I think that as far as like a recommendation goes, I would say they have maybe a bad rap because they kind of get lumped in with the Star Wars special because TV movies or whatever. But I think if you're a fan of Star Wars, I think it's worth revisiting these movies. They're not going to be something you watch every year necessarily. And I think if you have kids and they like Star Wars and they're just maybe getting into Star Wars, I would say show it to them. So I think they would fall into rare antiquity because also within the context of the time that these were made, you don't really get this sort of thing anymore. I mean, TV movies obviously still exist, but these are TV movies off of a huge property that is known around the world. And these are, I mean, they're not experimental films, but they're trying out some new things here with the technology, like not the storytelling because they're very simplistic, but I think with some of the creature effects, like they're trying some new things and stuff. So I think they fall into rare antiquity for me just for the context of when they were made.
So how about the comparison between the two? Which one did you like better? Did they both work on an equal level or?
I think Battle for Endor is it's better paced, but as an adult watching it, it's a little bit tougher because, I mean, Brimley, like he definitely brings it, but maybe I had more to hang on to with Caravan of Courage I don't like the Mace character because I also didn't really feel like there's some weird evolutions there with the character that I thought they had a better opportunity for teaching children some lessons and stuff like that. And he was just kind of all over the place. When one of your main characters is a little girl, and it's a little harder for me to actually be invested in it. So they're good for different reasons. And I think that, I almost wish that there was like maybe some edited versions of these that were maybe like, I don't know, 45 minutes. Then I think they could actually be like really tight stories, especially Caravan of Courage. I think there's some things you could probably cut out and edit it down to like a really tight story and like a fun adventure. So that one for me was maybe a little bit better in certain parts. I think overall it was a little bit better. Battle for Endor, it's a little bit uneven, but I think the ending was really great. I think like for a major battle trying to emulate Return of the Jedi, they do a really great job. And that's a lot of fun to watch, actually. I was really surprised because I was totally not expecting it.
All right, Geoff, I'll give you the honor of providing the final word here. So I'll give my thoughts. These movies are obviously aimed at kids. Saying that, however, I had a blast watching these two. I was shocked simply because I own the DVDs of these when I bought them as a joke when it first came out on DVD a few years ago. I watched them and I was not having a good time. I thought they were shit and cheesy and boring. And even though I enjoyed parts of it, I wasn't really enjoying anything. For some reason now, I have enjoyed almost every single scene, even though there are a few of them that are not the greatest. I loved both movies. I loved the old school stop motion effects. I thought it was good production design. These are TV movies we're talking about. For some reason, I felt, and it might be the time of year, these felt like Christmas movies, like Star Wars Christmas movies to me. And it has these good messages that are aimed at children and technically could be aimed at any age of doing the right thing. Something we didn't talk about is that I found quite pleasing is in this movie, because now the Ewoks can speak. After the family dies and they get captured, Wicket, and even when they get trapped in the cave, Wicket has a positive attitude through the entire thing. And he's saying, don't worry, we'll escape, let's have faith, and all these kind of things. I really found that welcome, and that was great because today's movies are so dark and they're very mature, which is a good thing. For me, it was very pleasant to go back to seeing something so simple and magical that is timeless. We talked about that feeling that I wanted to get from a Star Wars movie. Those simple messages and a timeless feel. These movies feel timeless to me, and they're TV movies. And I was shocked to find that out. Maybe it's because I had to go through a whole bunch of shit that is out there right now, whether it's on TV or in the theaters, that it's just so dark and depressing and morbid that this was just a breath of fresh air to me, and I loved it. I also love the world building that we talked about in Endor, in Caravan of Courage, with the different Ewoks and the magic and the different species. And now in the Battle for Endor, we get the Marauders and all of these kind of things. I think that was great. Magic of Star Wars is still here, as I mentioned. George Lucas's touch is very present here. Kind of wish there were more. Personally, now seeing these, it was almost kind of like a wish that, as I mentioned, Christmas movies, that these were more released every year when I was younger. And I think that these movies were heavily criticized when they came out at the time. For some odd reason, I remember that with this particular one, Battle for Endor, because it was a bit more violent and because it was aimed at kids, I think there was some backlash from parents and the media, and that's why George Lucas stopped these and then just went straight to the Ewok animated cartoon. So it's a bit of a shame because I think there's some stuff here that's really good. Overall, I agree with Nathan. I think these are rare antiquities, hands down. They're fun movies. High recommend for me. I'm shocked that I'm saying it. I loved it. Jeff, how about yourself?
Yeah, my mind is wrestling with itself over this. So I'll break down one at a time here. So Caravan of Courage, I did, for the most part, enjoy a good lighthearted time. Production values were through the roof for a TV movie. This is pushing the envelope. I mean, I was really surprised to see that because I didn't remember how well put together it was for a 90-minute TV special. You definitely got to give it credit for that. And as annoying as Mace is and as clunky as the writing can be and the pacing, it does still have some of that magic that bleeds through, I guess, from Star Wars or whatever. The Ewoks are good. And the simplicity of the storyline, I think, is the right vehicle for that. Battle for Endor, I didn't enjoy really at all. I thought it was too dark, especially the opening. The villains didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and it just felt like a bit of a jumbled mess. Neither film is written very well. I know they're geared towards kids, but there are kids' movies that are very well written out there. And I don't feel like this lives up to quality writing. But, I mean, I got give them credit for going for it. I mean, they went for it in both of these movies. The TV movies have never like this before. They haven't been like this since, so they went for it. But I think it's a bit of a mess. And the second one I didn't really enjoy sitting through, other than Wilford Brimley. As I've said, the ending didn't work for me. You know, as far as like to recommend it, I mean, I guess if you're a Star Wars fan, for sure, if you have young kids, like, you know, under 8 years old, that would probably be a decent audience for these films. I think anybody older than that's going to get it's just going to be bored with it unless you have, you know, if you're a Star Wars fan and you're an adult like us, you've got some nostalgia there. Okay. So rare antiquity, I mean, Battle for Endor, honestly, no. Caravan of Courage, I don't know. I hate to qualify it. Like in context as a TV movie, sure. Nothing's ever been done like that on TV and never will be ever again, probably. But does that make it good? I don't know. I don't think so. So I'm going to have to say no. I'm going to have to disagree.
Oh, the cold heart of Geoff rises again. These will be
cold-hearted.
These will now be officially part of my Christmas movie tradition. They'll be part of my rolling movie marathon.
You know what, though, Harry? You have the DVDs, man. Those are rare commodities, man. You could sell those for some bank.
Oh, I know. Happy I bought it when it first came out. So, yeah, it's great. So I have one last question, which I think is safe to say I know what the answer is. Are any of these TV movies better than any existing Star Wars theatrical movie?
Yep.
Which one?
It's definitely better than Attack of the Clones.
Which one? Both of them?
And that was both of them. That's the first thing I thought. When the credits rolled for both of them, the first thing I was like, well, it's better than Attack of the Clones.
Nathan?
I think I feel the same way because I just finished rewatching all the movies and I dislike Attack of the Clones every time I watch it because I actually feel like the acting in these two TV movies is better than much of the acting in Attack of the Clones.
I 100% agree with you guys. Both of these movies are better than Attack of the Clones. I mean, I'll give enough credit where credit is due. The other ones are, including Revenge of the Sith, are all above the quality of these movies, and they are better movies than these, but these ones are close to Revenge of the Sith as well. Yeah. But yes, definitely miles better than Attack of the Clones. Still the low bar for our podcast, I think.
Very low bar, yeah.
Haven't done the holiday special, so
and we never will.
Yeah, and I'm just saying because the bar is just on the floor at that point.
It's dug its way below the Earth's crust there.
Yes.
This is it for today's podcast. Just maybe a couple minutes. Tomorrow we are watching The Last Jedi. Any comments?
Well, I'm trying to temper expectations a little bit. I know I'm going to have fun, but I'm trying to not get myself too hyped up about it. But I am excited.
Oh, I'm excited, man. I just watched the trailer before, again, for the millionth time before we started the show today. I know it's smart to try to temper your expectations and try to like chill that a little bit, but fuck it. I like getting excited. So, wow, let's do this. 23 and a half hours away.
Yeah, I'm excited, but yeah, I'm keeping my expectations in check here. So I just thought I would see where you guys are standing in terms of your excitement level, but it seems that we're all at a reasonable mental expectation level here. So we're not bouncing off the walls. So that's good. So hopefully this episode helps prepare us for whatever we will see in The Last Jedi. Thank you, gentlemen, for attending today and participating. Nathan, thank you very much again. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Geoff, as always, been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. I'll see you at The Last Jedi.
Right on.
Cheers.
Sounds good.